The story begins with the story of how the imperial family of Hadelamid fell because of such baseness as treason. Our heroine knew that this would happen someday, so she always told her father about the need to reform the homunculus system. There was forbidden alchemy that was used to establish an absolute monarchy. A homunculus is a person created with an innate gift for magic and fencing, and brainwashed to be loyal dogs for the imperial family. They were supernatural beings and had special abilities. They were sent to the most dangerous battles under the pretext of achieving prosperity and peace in the empire. The homunculi, elevated to the rank of imperial knights in recognition of their abilities, were treated well, but they were no different from slaves. In such a reality, it is quite natural that the homunculi harbored a grudge against the members of the ruling family. With their actions, the imperial family continued to fan the flames of anger, which sparked the rebellion. If the girl's father Desmond simply ignored the danger, then Bridget, the third princess, having become the heir, only worsened the situation. After she was named Crown Princess, slave exploitation became more severe, and homunculi sent on long-term missions were killed in dangerous battles or died from overwork. And those who served at the palace ended up in her harem, where their knightly dignity was completely trampled. The girl could not stand it any longer and began to look in history for precedents of depriving the heir to the throne of his title. But Bridget, for whom she had become a thorn in the side, used her to make a political marriage. Unfortunately, such is the fate of all women without power, but it didn't work because of him. In just a week, all the homunculus knights of the palace were gathered by him to raise a rebellion. This man was the king of the homunculi, Michaelis Agneto. His mind was not clouded by the power of the imperial family, and he had outstanding leadership abilities. Beheading her father, who blindly believed in the power of obedience, he became the new ruler and gave his first order. The first thing the young man did was to order the execution of all members of the Hadelamid family. All but her, the seventh princess Ivanrose, Hloel Hadelamid, and Rosinit, were already dead. A month has passed since then, and she was locked in this room waiting for her turn. The girl is sure that only Rosinit will remain alive. The Philosopher's Stone is a symbol of imperial power that only reacts to the blood of members of the ruling family, so they need to leave at least one, and the girl is in love with Michaelis and is ready to do anything for him. Our heroine still would not want to live in such conditions, and if she regrets anything, it would only be that the choice of the heiress turned out to be wrong. Suddenly, a young man appeared in the room and asked if the seventh princess was sleeping. The girl looked at him and asked what brought the young man here at such a time. When the guy replied that he just came to visit her, Ivanrose asked, why wasn't he busy seizing power right now? The guy replied that he had indeed been busy with work for the last month, but he finally found time to visit her. Our heroine replied that it was very sweet of him, but she did not need his care. The young man leaned towards her sharply and said that it seemed that she was very angry with him, and she had the right to be, but that did not mean that he had nothing to say. She wouldn't have to go through anything like this if she had chosen him as her personal knight. Members of the imperial family choose one of the homunculus knights to be their personal subordinate. The chosen person had to serve his master with absolute loyalty. At first glance, this seems romantic, but the imperial family could get rid of them at any time and treated them as expendable. Because they rejected such a system, they did not have a personal knight. For this reason, she was criticized as a princess who does not know the rules. Contrary to her, Rosinit fell in love with Michaelis and ruthlessly got rid of her knight to choose him. And he planned to use her from the very beginning, after which our heroine clarified whether he was saying that she simply had to choose him. The guy replied that yes, then she would not be waiting for a death sentence now. Ivanrose came to the conclusion that it didn't matter to him at all who was playing the role of the stupid puppet princess. The young man grabbed his head and stated that she really was not an ordinary woman. Suddenly, servants burst into the room and reported that something was wrong with the child in the Empress's womb. The knight immediately began to leave, saying that he had to go, but they would see each other again soon. The girl immediately began to get nervous and wonder whether he meant execution, but she thought that she had already become accustomed to constant fear and loneliness. The eighth princess of Rosinit, Nadia Hadelamid, then appeared and greeted her sister. Noticing her rounded belly, Ivanrose realized that she was indeed pregnant. The girl confirmed this and added that it was Michaelis's child. Our heroine was speechless for a second. The fact is that homunculi lack reproductive function. Seeing her expression, the sister laughed and noted that she seemed to find it hard to believe. Did she really think that she was cheating on him? The girl replied that no, she was just surprised, because it was different from what she knew. Rosinit immediately sat down next to her and asked to find out about it right now, after which she put her hands on her stomach and said that she thought that the fruit of their love was created thanks to the power of the philosopher's stone. Our heroine immediately said that if she was looking for a knight, then he had just gone after her. Apparently they had missed each other. The relative took her by the hand and said that no, she came to see her because she heard that today was the day of her execution, so there was no need to worry. Hearing this, Evenrose immediately turned pale and muttered that this day had come. Not paying attention to this, the sister asked if she knew how their father, sisters, and brothers were executed. Up until that moment, they were executed by personal knights. For them, the opportunity to personally kill the person they hate the most is a generous gift from Michaelis. There is nothing sweeter than revenge. For example, Bridget was burned, but Evenrose probably imagined instant death by guillotine. Poor sister looks very shocked. In fact, a homunculus has already been chosen to accompany her to the place of execution. Since she did not have a personal knight, the choice fell on the one who wished to personally take her life. The one who most desires her death is none other than Michaelis Agnito. The girl wondered if no one else hated her as much as he did, maybe because she had not appointed a personal knight for herself. He decided that Hloel was a hypocrite who pretended to be different from the other members of the family. When our heroine muttered that it meant he despised her, the sister exclaimed that he hated her very, very much and wanted to know how she would be executed today. Evenrose asked her to stop and said she didn't want to hear anything else. But Rosinit did not calm down and said that she should know that she would be beheaded in the most brutal way. Our heroine was horrified. Could it really be the same method of the Hadelamid Empire, where death occurs only after 6 and maybe 10 blows with a blunt axe? The sister handed her a bottle and said that she had come to help. It was the poison belladonna. If she drank it, she would die quickly and painlessly. Evenrose thanked her and asked for forgiveness for having to do this while she was pregnant. Her sister replied that she didn't need to worry because it was her choice and she would take care of everything. After this, our heroine said goodbye to her, but the girl was not going to go anywhere. So the girl asked why she was staying here. Rosinit exclaimed, "How can she leave when her sister has not yet drunk the poison? Someone must remember her last breath." After which she handed her the bottle and began to insist that Hloel drink it right away. Our heroine saw no other way out, so she immediately started drinking it because instant death is much better. Finally, Rosinit asked if she knew the meaning of the word belladonna. In the language of flowers it means, "I curse you." When Evenrose stopped answering, the girl began to rejoice that now she had no obstacles, and Michaelis and the throne, everything belonged only to her, thanks to her sister for dying. After some time, a young man came into her room and began to wonder what had happened here. Rosinit explained that her sister committed suicide. She decided to take responsibility as a member of the imperial family and repent bearing punishment. When asked how she knew all this, the girl replied that she saw it with her own eyes. The young man asked if she had accidentally given her poison, and the girl replied that she had indeed simply helped her sister repent and leave. It seemed to her that the guy could not make a decision like his partner. She helped him make the right choice. An unyielding imperial person is a disaster for the country. There is enough of her next to him. The young man glared at her and hissed at the princess to shut her mouth. When the girl asked in surprise if he was angry with her, the young man began to take Evenrose in his arms. Rosinit immediately blocked his way and asked if he was really ignoring her now, since she was after all his wife. The young man did not answer her question, but simply hissed at the princess to get out of the way. The servants immediately began to tell her to move aside, and the girl was freaking out that they should not dare touch her. How could slaves even dare to allow themselves to do such a thing? If Michaelis doesn't stop behaving like this, she'll make him regret it, and she's actually carrying his child. She thought to herself that although he used alchemy for conception, he was interested in his health every day, calling him precious blood. But the guy just chuckled and said that he thought she was confusing the experiment with pregnancy. The philosopher's stone only reacts to imperial blood, and it can also control homunculi. Therefore, he wanted to take possession of the philosopher's stone by borrowing her womb and mixing his blood with her blood. The girl exclaimed that this still did not change the fact that this was their common child. The young man thought to himself that she didn't even know whose seed was in her to say that, after which he added that it was too generous to call him a child. What was in her belly was an alchemical experiment that had never been conducted before. How did she know what would be born, a monster or a person? Rosinet muttered, "I mean monster, how can he even talk like that?" The guy replied that she called them exactly the same what hypocrisy let the princess be taken away from here. On the way, the young man hugged our heroine and muttered that she never allowed him to be near her. Then he told the servant that the price was not important, even if it were necessary to call all the magicians and alchemists of the empire, they must revive her. The seventh princess of the empire, Evenrose Hloel Hadelamid, was a celebrity among the homunculi. She demanded better treatment for them and rejected the traditions of the imperial family. Because of this, she was despised by her family. Many homunculi wanted to become her personal knight, but she did not allow anyone to take this place. Even though the guy stopped trying to become the seventh princess's knight because of her steadfastness, he couldn't stop looking at her. Every time she suffered terrible treatment and contempt because of her refusal to follow bad practices, he felt something strange. Nothing like this had ever happened to him. And when Michaelis finally understood everything, he could no longer get rid of these feelings. A member of the imperial family and a homunculus, a relationship that was never destined to come true. One day, he heard the servants discussing that the wedding of the seventh princess was coming soon. It seemed that she was leaving for a distant country. Most likely it was a political marriage. In fact, she was sold. The young man firmly decided that such a fate was not destined to come true, so he took possession of the imperial palace. Finally, there were no obstacles left. He just needed to keep her close to him. That's what he thought at that moment. A servant entered the room and said that it had been 4 days since he had eaten, and that he had only recently managed to seize the throne. It is impossible to revive a dead person. Now it is necessary to sort out the current situation. The guy objected that the philosopher's stone must work miracles in order to use it. The blood of the Hadelamid family is needed. Let him immediately bring Rosanite and cut off her head. The assistant objected that the eighth princess was the last member of the fallen imperial family. Didn't he say that she needed to be left alive in order to gain the power of the philosopher's stone? The knight asked why he needed all this since Ivanrose was dead, and he no longer needed the philosopher's stone or the empire. But suddenly, another servant reported that a sage from the spruce forest had arrived. Michaelis said that he had heard that he knew a way to revive the dead. The sage replied that with all due respect to his majesty, he would only receive a breathing doll. The soul of the seventh princess has already separated from the body, and dispersed bringing it back is beyond the capabilities of alchemy and magic, so the true resurrection he desires is impossible. The young man muttered that his answer was no different from those he had heard before. Was he also trying to waste his time? But the magician replied that no, he wanted to offer another way, namely to turn back time. It is indeed possible, but the price is high. He will have to use half of the philosopher's stone. When the knight replied that the price did not matter, the sage said that he would then begin preparations for the ceremony. Then he added that he should know one thing: the central axis of the time regression will not be him, but Her Highness the seventh princess. This means that only Her Highness will remember everything but not him. Michaelis stroked her cheek and said that although he would not be able to meet her again, she still had a chance to meet him. Will she choose the wrong one again? Will he be desperate? Will he make a bad decision again? The sage replied that he could not know of such a thing. Then the boy said that he should perform the ritual since everything else was unimportant. When the magic began to work, the young man leaned towards her and said that when she was alive again, she should either kill him or choose him. When our heroine passed away, she heard perfectly well everything that her sister said. So why did she do this to her? Perhaps this was her goal from the beginning. She was the last member of the imperial family chosen by Michaelis. Did the guy really want to replace Rosanit with her, and she in turn being the owner, would not have allowed this to happen? It was a trap from the start. The girl didn't want to die like that. From what point did everything go wrong? Perhaps when the father weakened his position and lost control, or when Bridget became crown princess. And if she had ascended the throne, would anything have changed the imperial family, and the homunculi would still have come to disaster or not? If you remember, she simply turned a blind eye to those who needed her help if she had really been given a second chance, then everything could have changed. When our heroine suddenly came to her senses at first, she could not believe that she was alive. Looking around, the girl could not understand where she was. She was definitely locked up. And then her sister came and gave her poison. Why is it in the bedroom? Wasn't it destroyed? It's definitely not a dream. It's an illusion. Nothing has changed since Lowell used it. Then she looked at herself in the mirror and exclaimed, "Why is she so young? Did she really go back to the past? Maybe she suffered so much in captivity that she simply went crazy." Time regression is a magical alchemy of an unimaginably high level. A person must be a sage to even grasp the thread. Ivan Rose must meet with the teacher and find out everything, but now she needs to calm down and think. Judging by the room and its appearance, she is currently about 20 years old. If this is true, then the third Princess Bridget has not yet become crown princess. The leader of the rebellion, Michaelis and Rosinette, who gave her the poison, have not yet met each other. In other words, she is at the very beginning. So this time she definitely has to succeed. For everyone's sake, she will become the crown princess. The seventh princess's personal maid, Sedella Arfel, entered the bedroom and noted that Her Highness had woken up early today. Our heroine looked at her and noted that the maid looked very young today. The girl noted that this was probably the effect of the mask she used yesterday. Ivan Rose thought to herself that she had also become younger, which meant that she had definitely returned to the past. Then she had to find out exactly what time. Then she asked if there were any important events in the coming days. The assistant replied that yes, next week is the 20th birthday of the 8th Princess Rosinette. The girl noted to herself that if she was turning 20, then she was now 21. She had become 8 years younger. Sedella continued that such a date is special for the imperial family because on this day, they choose their personal homunculus knights at the election ceremony. This ceremony is the flower of imperial events and the dream of many a special connection that appears after the oath on a spiritual level. They say that the homunculi are lining up to become the 8th princess's personal knight. After all, Her Highness is the white rose of the empire. Our heroine muttered, "What other white rose? It is the belladonna of the empire." The maid continued that the funnier thing is that it has already been decided who will get this place. Does she remember the strange silver-haired homunculus at the ceremony? His name is Sylvestian Millard. Our heroine noted to herself that it really suits Rosinette, which is the white rose of the empire. The guy is certainly good with a sword and magic, but he stands out from the rest with his hair. Anyway, since the homunculi are just decoration for the ruling family, when she met Michaelis 3 years later, she ruthlessly got rid of Sylvestian. It would have been better if she had simply chosen him, but the truth is that the young man only got close to the 8th princess for the sake of rebellion. The young man used the girl to seize the throne and led the empire to collapse. Ivan Rose must stop him this time. There is nothing left to do but keep her sister and the knight as far away from each other as possible. The thoughts were interrupted by the voice of the assistant, who said that, frankly, speaking a lot of homunculi wanted to offer her their loyalty. Our heroine replied that it was hard to believe that they were ready to do this for the sake of a princess who had nothing. The maid exclaimed that it was true she had a very good reputation among the homunculi. It would be good if she also chose a personal knight. After which she came to her senses because the lady doesn't like talking about this at all. Lowell replied that everything was fine. She knew that the maid was just worried about her. Let her forgive her for causing her problems because of her stubbornness. She noted to herself that the maid had to go through a lot because of her low position. Since our heroine's mother was an alchemist, she was considered a half-breed, and besides, the woman passed away when the girl was still little. Mother was an authority on golem alchemy and valued everything that had consciousness and ego. The girl, like her, was sure that homunculi were no different from people and asked for a better attitude towards them. But in the end, she became an eyesore for the imperial family. At some point, they began to ignore her and cut her living expenses. How hard it was for Sedella to help her survive in such conditions. After she was captured in her past life, the maid must have simply been kicked out of the castle, after which she took her assistant by the hand and said that she would really arrange a luxurious life for her. The maid thanked her and said that she should remember that if she had good things in her life, then Arfel had good things too. Even Rose thought to herself that she would live this life peacefully, because now this was her reality. She had to do everything in her power. If an event from 8 years ago is happening now, then Michaelis is most likely still in a floating prison. In order not to repeat the mistakes of the past, it is necessary to immediately solve this problem. And for this, our heroine needs to meet her father face to face. The rulers of the Hadlamid Empire permitted polygamy, a form of marriage in which a partner of one sex has more than one partner of the opposite sex. So her father has 18 children every morning, 4 to 5 princesses, and princes are randomly selected to greet him. Even as a princess, she has to wait for an audience with him, so there will be no better chance than this. After which she asked if she was going to the morning greeting. The maid replied that yes. When asked who else would be there, the maid replied that the 4th and 5th princes, as well as the 3rd and 8th princesses. Our heroine didn't really like the fact that Bridget and Rosinette would be there today. Is today really that day, since she was with them at the morning greeting only on that day? During breakfast, a situation occurred where Hloel fell into the trap of the 3rd princess. It was after this that the girl finally fell out of favor with her father. Of course, since she has returned to the past, the day of her return must be a turning point in what is the best thing to do. Then she decided to dress up, because from that moment on, she was no longer going to be an ugly duckling. When the girl chose a smart red dress, the maid noted that she would also need to work on her hair. After all, she will have to compete with the graceful 3rd princess and the charming 8th, won't she? If it is too graceful or too charming, then they will definitely be compared, so it is important to find the perfect balance. Then she added that if you think about it today, she is very active in choosing her appearance. Our heroine replied that yes, from now on she will try her best, after which she decided to use her memories, and said that it seemed that Bridget would have her hair gathered in a braid, and Rosinette would have 2 low ponytails. The woman said that then she had ideas about what kind of hairstyle to do. After some time, our heroine was ready. On the way, the maid said that they would be late if they didn't hurry. The girl replied that she was right. Ivanrose was simply carried away by making tea for her father. The assistant noted that if it weren't for these golem observers, they would have instantly reached her through the deformation, but the use of magic is prohibited in the palace. Suddenly, our heroine heard a painfully familiar voice, calling her by name. It was Rosinette. She was bathed in love and received everything she could wish, for her sister was carrying Michaelis's child, and even the throne was in her hands. But just to remain the only member with the blood of the ruling family, the girl killed her. Now this man is one of her worst enemies, but now is not the time to give in to emotions. When Rosinette asked what was wrong with her expression, the girl replied that she was simply stunned by her beauty. The sister thanked her and noted that she, too, had put a lot of effort into preparing her morning outfit. Even Rose noticed the gray-haired homunculus behind her and said that she had never met her companion before. The girl replied that his name was Sylvestian Millard. He was a homunculus knight from the Imperial Guard. She asked him to accompany her to the main palace. Our heroine thought that an escort on the palace grounds was extremely strange. She had already started using it even before her appointment, and it seemed that she really liked it. And in the future, she will abandon the young man like a worn-out thing. But this time, the girl will not allow this to happen. After which, she said that she had heard a lot about him. The knight was talented in both fencing and magic. She believed that he would become one of the best and would worthily protect the one to whom he would take his oath. Our heroine sincerely wishes the young man to meet a good master. After this, there was a pause, and then the guy said that he was so touched by her words that he even forgot to answer. Usually, members of the ruling family, when they see him for the first time, ask about the color of his hair. Then our heroine remembered that they were actually late and exclaimed that they needed to go faster. The 4th prince, Rubens Hadlamid, the 5th prince, Icolis Hadlamid, and the 3rd princess, Bridget Agnes Hadlamid, were already waiting for them in the dining room. The maid noted to herself that everyone looked exactly as the princess had said. The girls immediately bowed to their sisters and brothers and asked if they were in good health today. The guys exclaimed that they hadn't seen Rosinette for a long time. They missed her very much and wanted to say that the white rose of the empire is in all its glory today. It seems as if every blade of grass and leaf in this palace exists only to highlight a flower like it. Our heroine thought to herself that in the imperial family, where everyone is golden-powered hair color, is a symbol of her low origin. The boys whispered that, "Isn't it wonderful when it's obvious that she's only half of imperial blood?" She would never be able to hide her origin. For some reason, this upset the girl. The brothers are clearly enjoying this very much, but now is not the time to respond to such indecent ridicule. The guys didn't understand what was happening to her, why she was behaving like that. She was completely different today. Suddenly, it was announced that His Majesty had arrived for a welcoming breakfast. Desmond first asked if they were okay, or if they had everything, and then, having received an affirmative answer, said that they could begin. Our heroine immediately said that she had prepared tea for him and asked if she could treat him to some. It was her hobby. She was confident in the taste and wonderful aroma, so she wanted to give it to him. The man agreed and added that he had absolutely no reason to refuse. When the maid poured the tea, the emperor noted that the aroma was truly magnificent. The girl explained that it was a special tea with lemon juice that relieves headaches. Ivan Rose recently noticed that her father often wrinkled his forehead, so she assumed that he had a headache and decided to make this tea. Desmond noted that she was very attentive to him. He had been suffering from headaches lately. Our heroine reported that she was very meticulous about preparing this tea and had been learning how to brew it since last week, so she hoped that he liked it. But she noted to herself that she had actually made it quickly from the first ingredients she came across. The man replied that the tea was simply wonderful, and he could already feel his headache going away. The young man noted that he thought that she was only interested in alchemy, but now she revealed another of her talents to them. The girl thanked him and said that the art of tea was somewhat similar to alchemy. First, you should carefully select all the ingredients, weigh them, and then mix everything in the correct proportions. The reason she was able to make such wonderful tea is because her father's talent was passed on to her. When her father started saying that she was like a younger version of him, Bridget glared angrily at her. Even Rose objected that he was exaggerating. How could she be compared to him, especially in front of the third sister, who was much superior to her? The boys did not understand what was happening to her. The child, who was distinguished by icy indifference, suddenly decided to get her father's attention. Bridget smiled sweetly and said that she was very glad that she had such a smart sister like her. The guy noted that Rosinette will soon have a birthday. She will have a personal night. This event is worthy of celebration throughout the empire. The sister objected that this was too much. Such a ceremony takes place for every member of the imperial family. By the way, she would be a little worried about its implementation. It's embarrassing to admit, but she has no talent for magic or alchemy, so she's not sure she can properly capture the night. The emperor said that there was no need to worry about it. Every member of their family was capable of imprinting at least one homunculus. Suddenly, Rosinette declared that if she were like Sister Ivanrose, such things would not bother her. The man noted that she was indeed very special, but she should still adhere to the traditions of the imperial family. When our heroine tried to say something, her father said that he didn't want to hear her excuses because she would refuse anyway. She was as stubborn as her mother. But Lowell objected that this was not so. She had previously been too narrow-minded and had even made her father worry because of her beliefs, so she had thought a lot last night. Then she stood up from her seat and announced in front of everyone that she had decided that she needed a personal night. While everyone else was in shock, the man exclaimed that she had finally come to her senses and that she should sit down next to him quickly because they had a lot to discuss. Rosinette didn't understand what was happening, it seemed to her, or things took a very strange turn. When her father asked her when she wanted to hold the ceremony, the girl replied that if he allowed it, she would like everything to take place without any special formalities. The man stated that she wanted to sort this out as soon as possible. If she said so, then it meant that she already had a homunculus in mind, didn't she? Our heroine answered that there is someone, it is the monster of the floating prison, Michaelis Agnito. The brother immediately exclaimed, "What is she thinking? He refused to take the oath of allegiance and was imprisoned, a monster that even his father could not force to submit. Why does she want to imprint him?" Even Rose clarified that if he wanted to call His Majesty's actions a complete failure, it would be more reasonable to say that the problem was in the homunculus itself. The man sighed heavily and said that this was a very dangerous guy who had not yet passed the election ceremony. This is a ceremony in which the homunculi are brainwashed into absolute loyalty to the imperial family. If Michaelis were a normal homunculus, he would have been eliminated the moment something went wrong. But due to his exceptional abilities, his punishment was limited to imprisonment in a floating prison. Her desire to capture someone like him would be regarded as a challenge to the power of the imperial family. She should be careful, so she asked, don't homunculi have to go through a selection ceremony before they can go out into the world? That is, the ceremony, for them, is like a blessing from the emperor. and the impossibility of accepting such a significant thing with dignity, she really feels sorry for him. Desmond replied that indeed, in this situation, only the homunculus himself loses. Our heroine continued, "Is there any reason to think about it?" The very idea of refusing the ceremony seems strange to her. How can a pathetic homunculus not accept the power of His Majesty? Perhaps the reason is not this at all, but lies in the flows of mana. Until now, he had only been left as an exception, hadn't she? She wanted to settle the matter and make him serve as her personal knight. This will be done with the help of the abilities she inherited from him. Please let her solve this problem. After a minute that seemed like an eternity, the man replied that he agreed, but he had one condition. After some time, our heroine and the maid finally reached that very place. This is a polar region that is not marked on any map of the empire, a training complex for homunculi. Every year, about 100 newly created homunculi are sent here, and over the next 15 years, they are carefully trained and educated to serve the imperial family. But only those homunculi who pass the exam and receive the first rank can receive the right to serve in the palace as a guard or personal knight. However, even they are only expendable material for the imperial family, not to mention the lower-ranking homunculi. It is strange that the rebellion has not happened yet. They were immediately met by Baron Pete Erk, who runs the training complex, and said that he was very glad that she had honored them with her visit. Let the princess allow them to be escorted to the floating prison. On the way, the man asked if the seventh princess knew that most homunculi who go out into the world have dark hair. However, while the homunculi remain in the training complex, they are bright and light. This is because of the limiter used to prevent magic from passing through the mana flow, so their hair turns lighter once the limiter is removed. The hair will return to its usual dark shade. The girl replied that she knew, isn't that why Sylvestian Millard is so popular? Pitt replied that indeed he himself learned about it after he was appointed here, simply an amazing sight, as mysterious as the metamorphosis of insects. Even the one Her Highness requested still hasn't had his limiter removed. She will soon see his distinctive hair color. Isn't pink hair unique? Maybe that's why homunculi are called dolls. Even Rose had absolutely no idea that Michaelis would be in such a terrible state. The man immediately shouted at this impudent fellow to immediately show respect to Her Highness the Princess. When the young man realized that he was seeing a member of the imperial family in front of him, he began to burst with anger. The girl was not at all frightened by this, so she said that she wanted to talk to him personally and that they should step aside. She thought to herself that now everything is different. He is the one who is locked in the cage, and it was she who came to him. Now his situation is very painful. When he saw her in captivity, did he feel satisfaction? After all that hatred, something he had been hiding for so long. But despite this, it seems that Michaelis from the past life was more kind to her because he never looked at her like that. On the contrary, the young man said that she should have chosen him, which is why she is here now. After which she said that first it was necessary to free him so that they could simply talk. When she removed the shackles from him and removed the gag from his mouth, the young man immediately asked what the princess was doing there. The girl replied that she had come to make him her personal knight. She was Evenrose Hloel Hadalamid, the seventh princess of the imperial family. The young man said that he had heard that the seventh princess had flatly refused a personal knight. The girl replied that everything was correct, but now she was in dire need of strengthening her position as heir. The guy asked if that was why she came to him. She must have heard stories about him. If she needed a slave so much, then it would be better for him to find another homunculus. The girl objected that she did not need a slave, she just needed a young man. Michaelis exclaimed that enough jokes, no matter what she called the collar, it would still be slavery. Still, she is no different from the rest of the members of the imperial family, which is what he had only hoped for. But he noted to himself why he was so disappointed. He knew that they were all like that. Our heroine replied that she could understand why he did not trust her, a member of the ruling dynasty, but she was not like them. She did not need a knight to treat him like trash. Also, she doesn't need anyone but him. She needs only him. Only Agnito can be her knight. When asked why him, the girl answered that she couldn't say it now, but when he became hers, he would know everything. Even Rose can promise that she will respect her knight as much as possible, and will also never use the power of imprinting to force him to do anything humiliating. The young man objected that this was empty chatter. Imprinting is an absolute magical contract. Our heroine replied that he was right. She was sorry, but she could only ask for his trust. Please let him be her knight. The guy turned away and told himself not to even dare think about this woman of imperial blood. Then he began to remember how her father beat him and shouted at this monster to immediately obey him and do what he was told. After his refusal, the emperor gave the order to imprison him in a floating prison, after which he said that he hates the ruling family. No matter what they say for him, they're all the same. But if becoming a personal knight is the only way to leave this place, then he is ready to even go for imprinting. Please let him take him away from here. The girl took his hand and said that they would leave this place together. Michaelis reported that he had no intention of renouncing his oath of allegiance to the emperor, and Ivanrose noted that she had thought so. The guy continued that, if she was not sure, then it was better to stop now. Something could go wrong, and her life would be in danger. The girl exclaimed that he was really worried about her. She would never have thought that this was possible. After which she began the sealing ceremony and used the magic of the imperial seal. It turned out not to be as easy as she thought, so the guy started to get nervous and say that it was time to stop, but our heroine asked him to keep quiet and instead support her. The young man cried out that she was really asking him to just stand and watch something so reckless. Even Rose objected that she had already said that everything was fine, but she herself was recalling a recent conversation with her father. The emperor said that he had one condition. If she failed, then let her kill this monster, that very second with her own hands. Therefore, our heroine understood perfectly well that she simply had to cope at any cost. When the fragments appeared in front of the young man, he guessed that it was a philosopher's stone, or more precisely, an alchemical crystal of enhancement. Just don't tell me that all those stones on her head are forbidden high-ranking artifacts. When Ivanrose put on these ornaments, she said that this belonged to the late 6th Empress. Today, she would need to borrow her mother's strength. Michaelis asked if he was worth all this. The girl confidently answered that yes, she definitely had to take possession of him. After the bright glow suddenly stopped, the girl could not understand whether they had succeeded. Suddenly, the floating prison began to rock sharply from side to side, and our heroine began to fall towards the open door. But at the last moment, the young man flew up to her and caught her so that she would not fall into the abyss. Having dragged her inside, Michaelis came to the conclusion that it seemed to have worked. As soon as something threatens her, his body moves on its own. It is necessary to put an end to the knights behaving like slaves. Although this is worse than slavery, the mere thought that a hair will fall from the master's head makes one shudder. The girl asked in surprise, what kind of owner was he talking about her? Or something. The guy in response asked why she was asking something so obvious. Our heroine fell to her knees and thought that she really did make Agnito, her personal knight, let her mother know that she succeeded. The young man immediately asked what had happened. Ivanrose replied that nothing, she was just tired. The ceremony required more strength than she thought. After some time, our heroine could not believe that she had received gold as a reward. Her father even provided her with more servants. It was good that they had taken care of people in advance who would not have been pleased with the successful imprinting. Suddenly, she ran into Sylvestian Millard, who greeted the 7th princess, and the girl asked if he was returning after escorting Rosinette. The knight replied that everything was exactly so. And from where was Her Highness the princess returning? Our heroine replied that she was coming from the election ceremony. The young man's face changed, and he asked not to be considered impudent, but could he ask who had been honored to become the personal knight of the 7th princess? Our heroine asked him if he had heard of Michaelis Agnito. The guy muttered in bewilderment. Did she really mean the monster of the floating prison? Then he muttered that there were also worthy ones in her circle, after which he came to his senses, congratulated her on her choice of a personal knight, and said that he needed to go. Even Rose didn't understand what had just happened. Perhaps something had happened to the young man. After this conversation, our heroine went to her room and announced that she had returned. There she saw Michaelis and thought that she could understand why even such a picky sister could not resist him. If she were an ordinary person, she would certainly fall in love. The young man leaned towards her and asked why she was looking at him so strangely. Perhaps he looked bad. The girl immediately began to deny it and say that on the contrary, this appearance suited him very well. The young man added that it was really a pity that he didn't have a sword. Our heroine said that, later, she would definitely choose a good one for him. Let him tell her if there was one in mind. Agnito noted that since she had imprinted the knight, She could easily demand the sword as payment, which was usually given out immediately along with the uniform, but apparently this rule was ignored. Since the members of the imperial family consider the homunculus knights to be nothing more than decoration, everyone tries to choose a weapon for him that would stand out from the rest. Of course, how could she forget about it? That's why they didn't give her a good sword to start with. Noticing her confusion, the young man added that he was not asking her to take care of this, but was simply stating the facts. Our heroine noted that he was very well informed, as if he had already lived in the palace. Michaelis explained that in the training complex, they were taught everything to exhaustion. Court etiquette, the knowledge necessary for life in the palace, and of course all aspects of serving the imperial family. He had to learn everything. Even Rose wondered what other aspects was it really about that very night service. What an awkward tension appeared in the air, after which she said that it would be better to discuss everything over a cup of tea. The girl was glad that he did not refuse dialogue. They should become closer as soon as possible. The imprinting is only a temporary measure, because soon Michaelis will proclaim himself the king of the homunculi. She is sure that it will not be difficult for him to overcome the power of the contract. When he plans to rebel, Hloel will not be able to stop him, so from now on she needs to establish a connection between them. If you think about it in their past life, they did share a cup of tea once. She was just being polite, not expecting him to actually agree, but the guy soon left, citing the need to serve near Rosanite. Our heroine said that she didn't know his preferences, so she wanted to ask if he liked the tea. The young man replied that he liked it. After which, he added that he especially liked its color. It was very similar to the color of her eyes. Then, he asked for forgiveness, and said that he should quickly go to Her Highness the 8th Princess. Having finished remembering all this, Ivan Rose turned to him and asked how he was getting along with his appearance in society. The young man replied that so many things around her resembled her hair color. The girl objected that her hair is not green, but lime blonde is still blonde. Michaelis replied that everything was true, but it was he who was so uniquely beautiful. The girl was at first confused, then asked if he had a guide to the imperial garden. Then it would be nice to walk there together. The guy replied that he would be looking forward to it. But in fact, the young man had in mind not so much the garden as her hair color. Our heroine was at first confused, and then asked if he didn't hate members of the imperial family, since she actually belongs to them. The guy came to his senses and muttered that if you think about it, then really why did he just say that? Apparently, if you don't focus on it, then he doesn't hate her. Maybe it's an imprinting effect. Everything fits together. It's even logical. If you constantly hate your owner, then you can get tired. But now he feels somehow unwell. He is afraid that without noticing, he will become the emperor's devoted dog. Even Rose immediately exclaimed that there was no need to worry, because this would never happen. Michaelis muttered that he was afraid to become loyal to the emperor right in front of the princess. Isn't it a strange situation? But it's doubly strange to hear from her that it won't happen. The girl realized that she had said something unnecessary, but in reality, nothing like that would happen. It certainly hadn't happened in her past life. The guy added that it was also strange that she allowed him to address her informally, because he thought that she would change her word after imprinting Hloel, replied that he could as an exception when they were alone and in the presence of Sedella. After which she handed the young man a cup of tea and told him to try it. After taking a sip, the knight reminded her that she had promised to tell him something. Since he had now become her man, he should find out the reason why she wanted to get him as her personal knight. Our heroine replied that she completely agreed with him and explained that she was going to become the crown princess. Of course, the main task is the place of the empress, but the main goal is the release of the homunculi. The young man asked, dumbfounded, if she was serious now. Then he grabbed his head and stated that now everything was clear to him. She needed a personal knight to take a position in secular society. Even Rose replied that it is true for the crown princess, it is actually important. As much as politics, a black sheep will never become the heir. As she said, the Pledge of Allegiance ceremony is this week, and the second important event will be next week. It's the 8th princess's 20th birthday party, the first official event she will appear at with him. Therefore, let him be sure to tell her, if he has any plans that it would be better for her to know about in advance. Michaelis replied that a personal knight must always be close to his master. That was all his plans. He usually accompanies his owner from the moment he wakes up until late at night. If there are no special orders, then he sleeps and eats in the barracks of the imperial knights in the north. Homunculus knights live in groups under strict and careful supervision in the barracks of the Imperial Guard. Personal knights have no special privileges in this regard, but they may not appear for roll call if they are rendering services to a member of the imperial family. If you think about it, on the day of the knight's election, there is traditionally a review. It is a custom when the homunculus must demonstrate his nocturnal skills to the master. Then, our heroine noted that the sun had almost set, which meant it was time. The young man did not understand what she was talking about. Was it really time for the inspection? But suddenly, the girl said that it was time to go so they would see each other tomorrow. The guy blushed and thought that he had thought that the seventh princess was the same as the other members of the imperial family, but in the end, he had only embarrassed himself. When the young man went out into the corridor, a maid caught up with him and called him by name, after which she reported that Her Highness rarely makes tea for someone herself. To this day, only 3 people in her memory had been awarded such an honor. Her teacher, the master of alchemy, the mistress of the magic tower, and the late 4th empress, they were all people that Her Highness respects and values. Michaelis became the 4th. The maid just wanted him to know about it. After some time, the emperor stated that he saw in front of him the same monster from the floating prison. The girl replied that, yes, his name is Michaelis Agnito. The man hissed that this was the same impudent fellow who refused to take the oath. Our heroine immediately asked him not to be angry, because he did not refuse the oath of his own free will. When asked what she meant by this, Ivanrose replied that, as she thought the problem was in the mana flows, when she saw the knight with her own eyes, she was finally convinced she managed to fix the problems by clearing some channels. When a heavy pause hung in the air, our heroine began to get nervous that he did not believe her. But Desmond just laughed and asked why she was so worried. Was she really so afraid to admit her outstanding abilities? The girl replied that she would be lying if she said no. However, when she stood before him, it was not fear that overwhelmed her, but a feeling of awe full of respect. So how could one even think of a careless tone at such a moment? The father replied that he did not expect such eloquence from her. Even though she was the 7th daughter of the empire, he was proud that she was finally using her talents wisely. The princess tamed the monster, and this is worthy of praise. This form gave it a much more decent appearance. Evenrose asked for forgiveness, and objected, as he himself admitted this monster became her knight. Therefore he asks to address him appropriately. The father replied that indeed she was right, but until the ritual was completed, no matter who he was, the emperor could not recognize him as a true knight, after which he turned to the young man and told him to kneel before him. Our heroine began to get nervous, so she quietly took the young man's hand behind his back. But the boy said that she had nothing to worry about, and then he stepped forward and knelt down in front of her father. The emperor placed his hand on his head and said that Michaelis Agnito, born of the art of alchemy, was henceforth subject to all bearers of imperial blood. He will not dare to go against his masters, and will not be able to resist their will henceforth and until his last breath. This is his highest priority. When the knight replied that, so be it, the man ordered him to kiss the ground at the emperor's feet. The girl did not understand why he was doing this, because slaves were subjected to such humiliation 2 centuries ago. But if she now went against her father's will, it would kill the monster of the floating prison. It was very noticeable that Michaelis had a hard time restraining himself, but he did as he was told. After some time going outside, Ivanrose gently asked how he was feeling in general. After a pause, the young man replied that it was completely different from when she did it. And just now, it was so disgusting that he had never experienced such a feeling before. The girl touched his hair and said that he was a great guy, because he was able to overcome himself. From now on, she will protect her knight and never allow such a thing to happen again. Agnes noted to himself that when he was around her, he felt as if there were no problems at all. Meanwhile, the main shareholder of the Third Empire, financial and political support of Bridget Marquis Chensley, asked if His Majesty had heard about something already. Rumors reached him that Her Highness the 7th Princess had chosen a personal knight. The most interesting thing was that it was none other than the monster of the floating prison. The head of military affairs of the empire, a relative of Bridget, the Marquise of Raimcal, wondered why such a change. Just think, a reclusive princess who never visited anything further than the library chose a personal knight for herself. His advisor, Viscountess Frick, noted that he had not said that the 7th princess was so different from her usual self at the morning meetings. Bridget noted that Ivanrose knows about the need to choose a personal knight. It seems she decided to enter the battle for the throne. There are no other reasons for such a change. But she only chose one personal knight. What will change now the seventh princess has no foundation, so let them leave vain worries. The girl replied that her words were logical, but for some reason she still had a bad feeling. The young man who was present at this conversation noted to himself that the Viscountess was rarely worried about what the seventh princess and her personal knight had planned. Meanwhile, our heroine asked Sedella how she liked the newly arrived servants. The girl replied that, as expected from the third empress, it was simply excellent. They all looked sincere and devoted. Ivanrose noted that if she herself says so, then it means that they sent really good guys. Now, instead of housekeeping, she will entrust her with chores outside the palace. First of all, let him go to the blacksmith's and order a sword for Sir Ignito, and also finish preparing the alchemy workshop. And also, let the maid also look to see if there are any decent estates south of the Ravello River. They say that the value of houses there will soon rise, so it will be a good investment. Let him choose according to his taste. As the maid left to carry out her errand, Evenrose thought about the fact that in order to enter into a real battle for the throne, it was necessary to meet certain conditions. Michaelis's imprint is only the beginning, marking her in social circles. The next task is the material component. This problem will be solved when Sedella completes the preparation of the workshop. But the most serious problem is yet to come. This is the first candidate for the throne, the third Princess Bridget. The reason why she is the first candidate for the throne is due to her many achievements. But the main factor is, of course, the number of supporters of her power. She has more of them than anyone else. Our heroine also needs supporters who can fight back. If you think about it, then the upcoming reception on the occasion of Rosinit's birthday is an opportunity that cannot be missed. The people with whom she needs to establish contact are well known to her. Now all that remains is to wait for the maid to complete the assignments. I wonder what Michaelis is up to now, if he'll run into any other members of the royal family, and if he ever runs into Rosie. Meanwhile, the young man was training, and the other guys were discussing the fact that the monster of the floating prison had become the personal knight of the seventh princess. It seemed that he had come to his senses after his imprisonment. If he had submitted to his imperial majesty from the very beginning, there would have been no need to hang around there. Suddenly, the young man rushed towards the golem that appeared on the training ground. Michaelis dealt with him so quickly and skillfully that it shocked everyone present. After the fight, Sylvestian Millard approached the guy and noted that he was simply amazing with a sword. But next time, let him control the power. The cost of repairing the golem will be required from Her Highness the Seventh Princess. The young man replied that he understood everything and that there was no point in breaking anything, after which he thanked her for the warning. Then he introduced himself and said that he was the personal knight of Her Highness the Seventh Princess, as he already knew, and the young man who he was. The interlocutor replied that he was assigned to the knightly guard and was also chosen as the eighth princess, but this was not much of an honor. In fact, he came to ask something after the sealing by the imperial family, whether those rumors about the changes were true. Michaelis replied that there seems to be a certain line. Until now, he didn't feel any particular emotions, but after the imprinting, the priorities changed in some natural way. And it's a bit strange. Sylvestian asked if this meant that, after the sealing ceremony, he would give his soul to Her Highness the eighth princess. When he answered that perhaps, the young man muttered that he did not know whether it was good, but to himself, he thought that apparently the ruling family had left an imprint on his soul. All its members were simply useless hypocrites. Noticing his strange reaction, Michaelis added that he thought he still didn't like it. Millard countered that he had said that priorities had changed naturally, so why had he changed his mind now? The young man replied that he shouldn't think anything bad. But even when things are difficult, it's worth having your own point of view. Anyway, when homunculi get boring, they just get rid of them. The interlocutor asked whether he really thought that the seventh princess could also get rid of him. Then, he immediately asked for forgiveness for being rude. There is no point in even thinking about it, because the seventh princess is not that kind of person. After which, he extended his hand and noted that it seemed to be interfering with his training, so thanks for the conversation. The young man also thanked him for the conversation, since he had not spoken to anyone for a long time. After which, the guys decided that they definitely needed to practice together sometime. On the way, Nicholas thought that he had just lost his mind for a second after the question asked by the young man, but why? His question is more than logical. The seventh princess is also part of the royal family, so she can do the same. But why is he so angry? Maybe it's the influence of the imprinting. Suddenly, the princess called out to him, and the guy asked what happened. Why she came here? She could have just called, and he would have come to her himself. But the girl replied that she was out for a walk, and decided to come in. Then she asked if he had been approached by members of the royal family. The guy replied that they had only discussed it at the training base, but no one had approached him. Ivan Rose replied that it was understandable, after which she suggested taking a little walk, since she really wanted to show him one place. When she brought him to the winter garden, the guy noted that it was very beautiful around. He didn't even think that he would be able to see something like this, at least once in his life. It's good that he was able to get out of the training camp. Is this the same principle as the miraculous magic that causes extreme weather conditions so you can maintain a certain temperature of the environment? It's just incredible. The girl replied that everything was correct, and he was quite perceptive. This greenhouse was the fruit of magic alchemy and flowers. The young man muttered that although he was not given to comprehend alchemy, he understood what role magic played here. The magical structure and mana flows were really strong here. It dawned on our heroine that homunculi cannot use alchemy. Homunculi gifted with magic may seem to be also strong in alchemy, but in fact they do not possess it. In the Imperial Alchemical Book of Harmony, this is explained by the providence of nature. Just as people cannot use the power of the Creator, homunculi created with the help of alchemy cannot use it. On the other hand, they are initially incapable of creation, therefore they are said to have no reproductive function. But she definitely remembers that Rosinit had a child from Michaelis. If this is true, then how did it happen then? Perhaps the answer will be revealed in the Philosopher's Stone, which only the Emperor and his heirs have access to. Noticing her thoughtful look, the guy asked if something was bothering her by any chance. When our heroine answered that she was thinking about how to make a child, there was an awkward pause. A moment later, it dawned on our heroine that she had said something wrong, and she immediately began to say that she hadn't meant that, while the guy explained that homunculi couldn't have children. The girl exclaimed that she was simply wondering whether homunculi were completely sterile or whether it depended on their gender. The young man replied that this was precisely why he decided to clarify why she was talking about this and looking straight at him. Even Rose objected that she was not looking directly at him, but simply looking ahead, no need to imagine anything. After which, she jumped up from her seat and said that it was time to go and let him go forward first. After some time, the eighth princess's birthday finally arrived. After taking a bath and all the necessary care procedures, our heroine realized that she was already very tired. The maid reported that Rosinit had been trying to imprint for 2 hours, although it usually takes no more than an hour. The girl had no talent for alchemy, so she had to perform the sealing ceremony 5 times. And in the end, she was able to complete the ritual only thanks to 2 fragments of the Philosopher's Stone. At that time, it was all kept secret. Meanwhile, the maid wondered whether she would be able to complete the ceremony safely at all. The girl replied that there was nothing to worry about, after which she asked what was going on with Sir Agnito. Sidella replied that right now they were preparing him in the living room today. He had to be fit for Her Highness. That's why he came early. Ivan Rose noted that this is true, because such receptions are not easy. You only need to greet the guests. You don't necessarily have to be there until the very end, right? The assistant replied that she didn't think it was necessary, but the guy should always be with her, after which she offered to take her into the living room so that she could see for herself how things were going there. At the sight of Her Highness, the girls cried out that she had come too early and that they had not yet prepared everything. The young man, who found himself naked to the waist, automatically rose from his seat and greeted her. The maid immediately asked if she liked this starry night makeup, which emphasizes men's eyes. Their maternal uncle seduced the countess using exactly this method. Then they asked Michaelis to sit back and look only forward so that they could finish. Our heroine said that she was afraid that she would embarrass him, so she would go. But the young man objected that everything was fine. He was not uncomfortable. The girl tried to object that he was clearly uncomfortable, but suddenly Agnito said that it would be better if she stayed. Ivan Rose thought to herself that this was the first time she saw him like this. Perhaps this was all the effect of imprinting. Was he really dependent on her now? For some reason, this made her feel so uneasy. The young man then said that he would remove his cape, as his body also needed to be made up. To highlight the best features of his body, it is necessary to highlight the neck collarbones, pectoral muscles, and abs. Our heroine added that the imperial palace is especially strict about clothing. Because of its authority, even if it is difficult, you need to be patient a little. The guy noted that, looking at this suit, he would not call it strict at all. The girl replied that in the social world, women's taste is in the spotlight. Then Michaelis brought the ribbon and said that at the royal banquet, it was necessary to wear it both for the guards and for the knights under direct control. Black lace blindfold in a crowded place. The blindfold clearly distinguishes homunculi from aristocrats, so that the homunculus does not dare to maintain eye contact with anyone. This is done to emphasize once again that they are nothing more than spineless dolls. Although the position of the imperial family became shaky, they definitely controlled the situation, even psychologically. Suddenly, fireworks started outside the window, and the maids exclaimed that Rosinette had finally finished the imprinting ritual. It took a very long time. The girl added that Sylvestian Millard finally became the direct knight of the 8th princess. Hearing the sadness in her voice, Michaelis asked if she regretted choosing him over that guy. Our heroine objected that she didn't regret it. For her, there was only him and no one else. And what about him anyway? Today, he will see Rosinette. But let him not even think of envying Millard. She will not let him leave her. The young man replied that of course he swears by knighthood that he will serve only her. The assistant said that since the ritual was complete, it was time for the princess to get ready too. Some time later at the banquet, the guests were discussing that the 8th princess had already turned 20. How quickly time flies, she had even acquired a personal knight. They say he is special. One of the girls exclaimed, "Wasn't it the 7th princess who just passed by?" The other replied that she hadn't had time to take a closer look, but she was a recluse. What was she doing at a birthday party? But it really turned out to be her. Then they began to discuss that all the rumors were true. The girl even came with a partner. The young man quietly asked our heroine what their plan was for today. Ivanrose replied that today she had to establish contacts with those who might be useful to her. When asked if he could help with anything, the girl replied that he should just stand nearby. The sight of his beauty was already her strength. The Hadelamid Empire was built on the basis of magic and alchemy. The source of power is the Philosopher's Stone, which naturally became the most important resource. Baron Parnello was given control of the magic stone mine. She heard that his family rebelled against Bridget in the past. Therefore, it is quite possible that she will be able to secure the support of this family through his wife. Our heroine approached her and said that this drink was very strong. If she allowed, she could offer her fruit juice. The girl immediately greeted Her Highness, who said that she was also pleased to meet her. She heard that immediately after the wedding, the girl was very busy taking care of the Baron, who worked a lot. Did she come here today with her husband? Evanrose heard a lot about her love for him. If she came with him, then how could he leave his beautiful wife completely alone? The girl replied that he really had a lot to do, and seeing how he was constantly working, she also began to study in order to help him at least a little. Hloel noted that this is incredible. Because she is such a reasonable woman, she is sure that she will definitely succeed. It's been 6 months since she got married. This year will be the first summer they will spend together. The Rectora River near the Parnello estate causes terrible floods every 50 years. They should be careful during this rainy season. She only recently learned about this from books. There are several records of similar incidents in the imperial archives. This happens every 50 years. After the rainy season, monsters always attack. If the flood can destroy the wall, the consequences will be terrible. She may not believe it, but she will tell her maid to find these materials for her. Before going to the estate, let her go to her residence. The girl thanked Her Highness and said that, of course, she would definitely come to see her. Meanwhile, the guests were discussing that they didn't know that the 7th princess was so sociable and open. She looks very cute when you approach her. The brother and sister, who observed our heroine's actions from the side, could not understand why she began to behave this way. Bridget turned to her personal knight and asked if he knew what he should do. Now he replied that of course he did. Meanwhile, Michaelis turned to our heroine and warned that the 4th princess and 5th prince were approaching them. The girl immediately informed her interlocutor that she would take her leave as she wanted to take a little walk. It was very nice that they kept her company. Standing outside the door, The young man stated that they had managed to break away. Evenrose replied that it was only thanks to him that they were able to escape. Suddenly, the princess almost fell, but said that it was okay. She just hadn't worn high-heeled shoes for a long time. The guy asked if she couldn't lighten her weight with magic. Our heroine replied that she could, but then her gait wouldn't be as graceful. Suddenly, the knight sat her down on a chair. The girl did not understand what he was going to do. Mikolas took off her shoes and began to work on her foot with magic, saying that he could only use the simplest one. Evenrose really felt better, and she wondered to herself that he had learned this in training camp too. Hearing someone's footsteps, the guy immediately grabbed his sword, and the young man who approached them said that he had been waiting for her. When asked who he was, the stranger replied that he was sure she had heard of him. His name was Albert Redman. He was impressed by how well she chose her people. Our heroine noted to herself that he is the second son of Count Redman, who is now part of the state council, and in the future he will become a greedy and depraved official. He took a leadership position only thanks to his father, the count. He is always so cheerful. One day the boy was demoted, but thanks to his father's power, he received a managerial position in the treasury. From then on, he became in charge of the treasury's expenses and income, and later he embezzled it. Ivanrose was also one of his victims. How much money did he steal from her budget thanks to him? She did not receive any profit from events in the imperial palace. She tried to complain several times, but he cleaned up after himself well, and there was nothing to complain about. If you think about it, he really is talented in all his obscenities. Mikolas asked if she knew him at all. The girl replied that she knew, but she thought to herself that it turned out that this person was closely monitoring who she communicated with, and it was not worth making such a smart enemy for yourself. So all that was left was to smile wryly and say that she was pleased to meet him. She had wanted to talk to him from the very beginning. The young man was delighted that, as expected, the princess had already chosen him. He believed that she would not judge him by rumors, namely, that he is careless. These rumors were spread by his boss, Count Sanchez, but everything is in order because princesses judge people by their actions. Hallowell noted that Albert's father, Count Redman, had a bad relationship with Count Sanchez. Come to think of it, the guy was demoted just when the man was in charge of the state council. From all this it follows that the young man's words may be true. And what if in a past life, the young man was simply treacherously deceived by a dishonest count? But this still does not justify his further actions, although it may give him another chance. After which she turned to him and said that she believed that he needed to return to the state council. The young man objected that he had been fired from there, so why return to a place where he was not welcome? The girl whispered that there were many sacrifices at the sealing ceremony today. She saw the end of the ritual, which ended right before the banquet began, so she assumes that the ritual was completed thanks to something special. But nothing should discredit the name of the ruling family. She is sure that everyone in the state council is now busy destroying evidence. After Evenrose added that she thought he could help her with the matter, the guy exclaimed that he would go there right away since his specialty was documents. As he ran away, the girl noted to herself that she had previously kept it a secret, that Rosenet had used 2 fragments of the Philosopher's Stone. The sister, of course, tried hard, but if Albert thus attracts the attention of his superiors, then he will have no reason to become a swindler. Our heroine wouldn't say that he did much harm to her in her past life, but still. When she suddenly leaned against the knight, he immediately asked if everything was okay, but the girl simply asked him to stand like that for a bit. She was just so worried she didn't even think that he would be waiting for her here, so she was afraid that he would screw it up. The young man replied that he understood everything, but she did a great job killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Our heroine replied that this was excellent, and now they had one more thing left for today. Aristocrats who study at the Imperial Academy of Gnosis among them are members of the State Council. Among them is the son of the Marquis of Limitiella. Although all the sons succeeded, this one was deprived of the right of inheritance because he was not the eldest. He and Count Radel's son are ideal candidates for her, who has just begun to make allies. Suddenly, our heroine informed the knight that this time he needed to stay away as she needed to use her charm. Since in this world the strength of women depends on their husbands and partners, since she does not know them, then all that remains is to step forward, relying on herself alone. She must enlist the support of at least one of them. Someone will become her ally today. After which, the seventh princess turned to the young men and asked if she could sit down. The young man immediately told her to make room for her, and she sat down next to him. Even Rose was surprised, because he was different from what she imagined. Could it really be him, Calix Limitiella, who, according to rumors, has no manners? Sitting down, the girl noted that it seemed they were talking about Gnosis. Could she join the conversation? She was always interested in the academy. The guys immediately started telling her what was going on, and said that she had to see it with her own eyes. Then they noticed that her glass was empty, and immediately surrounded her from all sides, saying that this should not happen. The girl found it strange that they were fixated on something like this, plus there was brandy in the glass, not soda water. In the Empire, it is a rule to rudely refuse the first glass given to her by another person without emptying it, but she can pass them on to the person who did not offer her a drink. They obviously did it on purpose. Suddenly Calix's voice was heard saying that if she wanted, she could give them to him. But there is a flip side to the coin. After giving him the glass, she will have to fulfill his request. If you think about it, he is the only one who did not offer her a drink. It turns out that she can only give them to him? Is this some kind of trap? And what about all the other guys? Are they really doing this on his orders? What does the young man want from her? Unexpectedly, Michaelis came to the rescue, asking to be allowed to take the glass. After which, he emptied the contents in a flash. Ivan Rose only had time to exclaim that there was a strong drink in there. Limitiella hissed that he had heard that homunculi were trained to be immune to poisons, so alcohol wouldn't hurt him. The young man asked, what was wrong with that? Shouldn't a homunculus always take care of its master? Our heroine immediately realized that it was better to leave, and thanked them for entertaining her with a pleasant conversation, but she needed to take a little walk. On the way, Michaela said that she seemed to have forgotten that she actually had him. The girl replied that before there simply was no one who could help her, so she got used to doing everything herself. The young man noted that the drink had a very high alcohol content. It seemed they did it on purpose. Did she know about it? Our heroine answered that yes, she had often been bullied in this way before. The guy got a little angry and replied that he understood everything. He was not susceptible to alcohol, so if something like that happened, then let him leave it to him. Even Rose thanked him, and noted to herself that she liked all of this. She liked that he was on her side. Meanwhile, the eighth princess asked Sylvestian what it was like to be a knight of the White Rose. The young man replied to Her Highness that it was a great honor for him. The girl stated that she knew he would say that since he became her knight, he must be the best in the palace. When the young man replied that he would not disappoint her, Rosenet said that this could not be, because she had chosen him. After which they entered the hall, where everyone solemnly greeted the eighth princess and her personal knight. Millard attracted people's attention, so everyone started to discuss that he has white hair, which means he is special, of course. Only such a person can match the eighth princess. The girls were flattered by all these words, so she wanted everyone to continue, because it took a lot of effort, but she was not mistaken in choosing him. Then the elder brothers made their way through the crowd to her, exclaiming that they had been waiting for her very much. Was it really him who made her work so hard today? Because she had to spend several artifacts, this guy cost her a lot. They really irritated the girl, and she didn't know how to shut their mouths as quickly as possible. Why shout about the fact that she had no abilities? Bridget appeared next, congratulating her sister, because she couldn't help but come to her celebration. The girl is a great girl because she was able to capture the best knight in the palace. It must have been hard for her. There were many others who wanted to get it, but they failed. The eighth princess is truly special. Having heard all this, the young man asked for forgiveness for causing so much trouble. Sylvestian will definitely repay all the hardships she had to go through with her loyalty. The girl noted to herself that he was perceptive, although in principle, he was simply obliged to understand this. Our heroine thought to herself that this all resembled a scene from some fairy tale. Now Rosenet appeared here, but so far everything seemed to be going well. She chose Millard because she liked him, and Michaelis is hers now, so she thinks everything will be fine. But what will happen if suddenly the eighth princess falls in love with Agnito again? Even Rose understood perfectly well that this simply could not be allowed under any circumstances. The thoughts were interrupted by the voice of Michaelis, who said that the third princess had left. The girl immediately came to her senses and said that she also needed to go there. Our heroine absolutely did not want to meet her younger sister, but now there was no choice. So she added that she needed to congratulate the hostess of the party. People immediately started discussing that the seventh princess came to congratulate Rosanite, both of them only recently acquired knights. I wonder what they will say to each other. The spirit of rivalry is literally felt in the air. Everyone heard that he that Agnito is also special. He was called the monster of the floating prison. Moreover, the seventh princess proved herself well before the eighth came. The girl communicated so nicely with everyone, she was the center of attention at this banquet. Even Rose congratulated her younger sister on her coming of age and wished her to remain just as beautiful. Rosinette thanked her for such wonderful words. But our heroine couldn't help but notice that she was upset by people's reaction. After which, she decided that she needed to leave before sparks started flying between them, so she wished them a good time, and they needed to go. But suddenly, the girl stated that now she also had a knight. Would she like to introduce them to each other? Chloe started to get nervous that Michaelis was interested in her, but then she tried to reassure herself that it was just an acquaintance. When she introduced the young man as her personal knight, Agnito bowed and greeted the princess. After this, there was a deathly silence in the hall, and our heroine could not understand what her little sister had in mind. After a long pause, the eighth princess extended her hand to him, as if hinting that he should kiss it. Even Rose began to get nervous. Why did she decide to do this because she had never extended her hand herself before? She thought she only needed to be careful until the imprinting ceremony. But no, right now, Michaelis's eyes were partially hidden by a blindfold. This simple, polite eighth princess can do this as an exception. She probably thinks that if she honors him with such an honor to kiss the hand of the imperial white rose, he will immediately fall in love with her and forget about his mistress. Kissed her hand, the guy said that he greeted her again now, officially. On the way, our heroine thought that she did not want their meeting to happen this way. Then she noticed that the young man was wiping his hand, pretending to adjust the bandage. Soon it was announced that His Majesty the Emperor had arrived, blessing and glory to the son of Hedelamide. Rosinette was very glad that he actually came. The man congratulated her and added that he had dropped by. For a short while later, he would have to return to work. Let her treat this with understanding. The girl asked him not to say that, because he had organized such a celebration for her, and had even managed to find time to come personally. When our heroine approached her, the emperor was surprised that she had also come. Ivan Rose explained that she had to congratulate her younger sister. The man turned to Rosie and said that he had prepared a gift for her. It was located on the eastern side of the palace. The man had created a garden of white roses for her. The girl was completely delighted and exclaimed that she was very grateful to her father for such a pleasant surprise. At this moment, Chloe thought that she was standing next to her again, and people were starting to compare them. They were saying that, as expected, the eighth princess received a generous gift from the emperor. But what about the seventh princess? So I decided that I should continue to behave like an unloved and unlucky princess. The guests did not understand what kind of injustice this was. She was also the daughter of the emperor. Why were they treating her like this? Suddenly, a young man approached her and took her hand firmly as a support. The girl was very pleased that even in such a situation, he decided to show that he was on her side. The man coughed and told her that if she wanted anything too, she should tell him right away, because he had to congratulate her on having acquired a knight. When he added that he would give her time to think, our heroine replied that there was no need for that, because she already knew what she wanted. Even Rose would like to move. The emperor was surprised. Didn't she like the place she lives in now? The girl objected that it was lonely, and there was little space. She would like there to be a dressing room where she could store clothes and accessories, to have a sunny balcony, and it would be good if there was a beautiful view of the palace from there. The father exclaimed, "How could she not have a dressing room? How could a princess live in such a place? What do the palace managers do anyway?" Our heroine thought to herself that he himself had left her unattended, but she objected out loud that today was Rosinette's birthday, so there was no need to get angry and spoil her mood. His Highness agreed with her and said that she was right, so it was necessary to calm down for the sake of the eighth princess. After which, he loudly announced that, as a gift to the seventh princess, he was presenting a room of fresh greenery in the Eastern Palace. People immediately began to whisper that since the room even had a name, it was a much greater gift than some garden. Until now, only the third princess had a room with a name. Our heroine immediately thanked him, and the man said that he would come by sometime when she had already moved. After which, His Highness announced that it was time for him to go, and that everyone else should have a wonderful time. All those present began to whisper that it seemed that the emperor was inclined towards the seventh princess, and perhaps in the future, the distribution of political forces would change. The guests congratulated her and said that they had heard that this room was the most beautiful in the Eastern Palace. It seemed that her father cared about her very much. Let him invite them sometime. Our heroine answered that she certainly would, and then noticed that the younger Countess Anaïs Liusierde, her most important guest for today, was standing nearby. Ivan Rose absolutely had to talk to her, but the girl began to move away, and she couldn't get through the crowd to her. So she thanked everyone for entertaining her with conversation, but she needed to rest a little. Meanwhile, the assistant told Bridget that the seventh princess had been acting strange lately, and had even received quarters from the emperor himself. The girl noted that for the first time in her life, she did the right thing, so her father was happy and decided to reward her. This is how one can interpret the actions of the father, a one-day person, who will soon be out of favor again. She cannot even attend a meeting of the Privy Council. The man replied that it was true that despite the emperor's actions, the first contender for the throne would always be the third princess. Bridget agreed with his words, but noticed that her right hand was very worried. Therefore, she said that if she was so worried the girl would try to find out more about her, there was no need to worry so much. Then they noticed that the younger countess had come the one who had her own business installing bathtubs, probably came to the third princess again, really persistent. When the girl wanted to approach Bridget, she turned around and started to leave, saying that this was not something worthy of her attention. Meanwhile, Michaelis told our heroine that she was very tired, so she needed to find a quiet place and rest. Even Rose replied that there are many of them in this estate. How about the Pearl Room? The imperial palace is full of debauchery and temptation. This room was specially created for those who are tired and want to rest during the banquet. But one day, people saw an unmarried man and woman entering the room, and since then, this place is often featured in various gossip. Therefore, the Pearl Room became officially used for sudden sexual intercourse. At first, our heroine could not understand what was happening to the young man. Then, it dawned on her what he was worrying about, so she laughed and said that there was no need to worry since she hadn't even thought about anything like that. After which she added that he was probably tired too, since he had been on his feet all day, so he should sit down too. The young man noted that it was so quiet around. Could it really be that they were the only ones in this room? Our heroine answered that they were not alone. The golden ribbon meant that there was someone inside, but somehow it was really too quiet. Then I remembered that the room is soundproof, blocking out both internal and external sounds. He is strong in offensive magic, perhaps. Barrier magic is a little unclear to him. The guy asked if she said that she specializes in magic. The girl replied that, yes, she studies a wide range of magical powers and their combination with each other. But our heroine is terrible at attacking magic. She has absolutely no talent for it. The young man replied that he was sorry that she was weak in it, but was very glad that attacking magic was inaccessible to her. Why Michaelis answered that, now he became her sword, so there is no need to get into a fight herself. Thanks to the ritual of sealing, knights always say something like this, and it is normal for them. But why did it become so warm in the heart? Hearing some commotion, even Rose noted that it seemed the evening was coming to an end. There was one more thing that needed to be done. Let him bring one person to her. 3 years ago, in the drawing room of Princess Bridget, Count Luciard, head of the construction company, was considering a project for the construction and operation of public baths throughout the Yellow Island. His only daughter stated that it seemed the profit would be small. The third princess replied that yes, as she had said, the profitability of this undertaking was still in question, but it was aimed at improving the island. This is an honorable mission for the Count. He owns the best construction company in the empire, so he thinks that such a project suits him, so he offers it to him. If he doesn't want to take on this, then let him just say so, because there are many who are willing to take on this issue. When the man simply closed his eyes silently, the girl stated that great, this was his contribution to their empire. The girl recalled that Bridget manipulated her father, so he had to put a seal who knew that such a disaster would happen. The price of magic stones for heating water has skyrocketed recently, and it is prohibitively expensive for them, and fire cannot be used due to fire prevention regulations. If nothing is done, there will be financial problems, and their company will simply go bankrupt. But the third princess simply ignores her and doesn't even give her the opportunity to explain anything to her. The thoughts were interrupted by the voice of Michaelis, who said that he had come at the request of the seventh princess. His mistress would like to meet with her. The girl was very surprised by this and muttered that she was actually about to leave. But the guy said that the princess would not detain her, let her please give her just a little of her time. The count's only daughter decided that since Bridget was ignoring her, she would agree, so she replied that if it was only for a short time, she should take her to her. The eighth princess saw all this by chance and thought that it was somehow strange. Our heroine greeted Anais and said that she heard that Count Leuciard was having problems because of the imperial order. It seems she knows how to help. The third princess doesn't even remember them, but she knew from the very beginning that the prices of magic stones would soon skyrocket due to the decrease in their number. This was all done on purpose. Bridget plans to buy their broken company at a bargain price and give it to Chensley. She will also entrust the Vondo reconstruction project, which will soon become very profitable to Chensley. The girl grabbed her head and muttered that his company was among the top 3 largest in the entire empire, so by taking possession of them, she would gain influence in the financial market. Even Rose responded that yes, she is currently assembling a worthy entourage and trying to build strong connections with businesses for support. Anais replied that it was now clear where Chensley suddenly got such huge amounts of money from. Were they really buying up magic stones? Our heroine answered that true. Now only business giants can afford them in large quantities, and this creates a very tense situation in the market. If the fact of the purchase becomes known, they will have big problems. The girl could not believe that it was because of some magic stones that they found themselves in such a difficult situation. It turns out that the third princess knew everything perfectly well, and Anais believed in her until the very end. Hlul said that it was not her fault, no need to be angry with herself. She would definitely help her. After the explanation, the girl exclaimed that she was their savior and was looking forward to opening the soap business that Evenrose had written about. Our heroine replied that the countess was probably very exhausted by these problems. It would be better to return home and rest a little. But the third princess was definitely keeping a close eye on her now, so in order not to arouse suspicion, it would be better if she stayed a little longer. The count's only daughter replied that she would do just that first. She would show them how upset she was, and only then would she go. As Evenrose watched her go, she thought that this was enough to prevent the third princess from getting strong financial support. Then perhaps Bridget will not relax fire safety measures, and a major fire in the public bathhouse can be avoided. It was a terrible disaster. More than 300 people died. She must prevent this. Her first step against the third princess will be exactly this. Then she remembered about Michaelis and started shouting that she had already finished what he was doing there. But when she went out into the corridor, she did not see the young man there. This seemed very strange to her. A little earlier, Rosinante was angry that the seventh princess is always on everyone's lips. What are everyone thinking about because today is her birthday? Now she also went somewhere with her personal knight, perhaps, to the Pearl Room. Suddenly, she noticed that Michaelis was heading somewhere with this girl. Where was he taking her? Right now, they are heading to the Pearl Room. What is going on? What are they going to do there? Something indecent. And even 3 of them. Why did the sisters suddenly become so bold? Rosinante actually wanted to capture her knight first and test his professional suitability, so she decided to stop them at all costs. But then she saw that the girl went further into the room, and the young man remained standing in place, so it was not what she thought. At first she wanted to interfere with her sister, but now she had something more interesting to do. Therefore, she approached the knight, who immediately greeted the 8th princess. Rosinante noted to herself that from the very beginning, she felt that there was some strange tension between them. When asked what his sister was doing in that room, and whether she was alone there, Michaelis replied that she wanted to rest alone. The girl noted to herself that she knew perfectly well that Ivanrose was not alone there, but she would pretend that she did not know. After which she asked if he would go to her, since he is in fact her personal knight. The young man responded by asking whether the 8th princess should not be with her personal knight right now. The girl was a little confused and replied that she just wanted to be alone for a bit. Agneto replied that this was very commendable, but please let him always take Sir Sylvestian Millard with him. After thinking for a while, the girl said that since he was so worried about her, he could not accompany her then. The guy didn't like this at all. but he took an oath of allegiance, so he can't refuse the request of a member of the imperial family. He also couldn't distract the seventh princess during such an important conversation for the sake of some permission, so he replied that he would be happy to. The young man felt terrible disgust. It was even worse than when he took the oath of allegiance to the emperor. But why? When the girl called out to him, since he had been silent for a long time, the young man said that he would take her to the garden. While our heroine was looking for her personal knight, she accidentally ran into Sir Millard. When asked why he was alone, the guy replied that he was looking for the eighth Princess Evenrose, went cold from what she heard. Our heroine couldn't believe it could the girl really have gone somewhere with Michaelis. Meanwhile, Rosinante was indignant that the guy was walking too fast, and he in turn asked for forgiveness. The girl noted that he was not particularly talkative, but that the guy again asked for forgiveness. Suddenly, the girl stopped abruptly and declared that she wanted to see his face without the bandage. Then she began to pull her hand towards the face of the young man, who absolutely did not like all of this. To ask a homunculus for something when its master is not present is equivalent to an order that cannot be disobeyed. While the young man was mentally thinking about her taking her hands off him, Ivanrose appeared and stood between him and his sister, after which she looked at her carefully and asked why she was taking away someone else's personal knights. The girl replied that Sir Agnito saw that she was alone, so he offered to accompany her. Our heroine noted to herself that this was a lie, but out loud she said that she had met Sir Millard, who was looking for her. She just had to wait for him. The eighth princess exclaimed mockingly, "What a pity, apparently. They just missed each other a little." Evenrose looked her straight in the eyes seriously and told her to walk with her knight in the future. She thought to herself that Michaelis is now her personal knight, but please let everything not be as before. The young man said that he was very glad that she had come on time, since the eighth princess wanted to remove the bandage from him. Haloel noted to herself that removing the bandage meant that the homunculus had to fulfill any requests during the night. Didn't Rosinante know about that? After which, she wholeheartedly asked Agnito for forgiveness for leaving him alone. The young man objected that she should not apologize to him, and now he would take her to her chambers. A week later, Michaelis noted that she had ignored numerous invitations. The girl replied that it seemed that her authority in high society had grown significantly. It was not easy to read all the letters. She was able to realize all her plans for the near future. Now everything is just wonderful. The main thing is that it continues this way. The guy asked if the place she was going to was part of her plan to become crown princess. The girl replied that yes, and that it was the most important part. Upon seeing them, Albert Redman exclaimed that he welcomed the seventh princess, whether she had come to inquire about imperial state affairs. Imperial social activity, simply put, is the social activity carried out by the imperial family, from small donations and sponsorships to all kinds of travel assignments. When you have a high public activity rating, it allows you to interfere in politics. Because our heroine previously preferred not to interfere in this her position, in this regard is much worse than that of the third princess. In order to be able to influence state affairs, it is necessary to increase one's activity. The young man suggested that she look at these catalogs. She might find it inappropriate, but he advises her to look at the kind of activity that will allow the country to boldly step into the future. For example, open sponsorship of cultural figures. If such people become famous, then its significance will increase. But the problem is that a lot of time may pass before they become famous. Ivanrose replied that it was true that it was difficult to make progress quickly in such a business, and that he should recommend her some of these projects that he thought were worth investing in. After the conversation, the young man asked if she was trying to accumulate enough social rating to be able to visit the mine for the extraction of magic stones. It seems that she took him with her specifically so that he could show her everything there. Evenrose replied that nothing could be hidden from him. She was going to check the homunculi at the mine. In the first half of the year, she wanted to correct the situation as soon as possible. The young man muttered in surprise that it turned out she hadn't lied when she came to him for the first time. Suddenly, a maid ran out to meet them, shouting that something had happened. As a result, it turned out that His Majesty the Emperor arrived at the residence. Our heroine did not understand why he came, and even took his sisters with him. But on the one hand, this is good since it is necessary to study the personal knight of the third princess. She changes them very often, so it's confusing at the moment. Her assistant's name is Irizo Halston. It seems he was one of those who served Bridget for a long time. They say he was very good for her at night. There were even rumors about it. After some time, the third princess noted that the room of fresh greenery was really beautiful. Our heroine replied that she agreed to thank her father for giving her this room. She is very grateful to him. The man laughed loudly and replied that he was very glad that she liked it. It was good that he gave this room to her. The other sisters were noticeably in a bad mood, but they can be understood since they have a room without a name. The girl noted that he seemed genuinely pleased that Ivanrose had captured the knight, since he had given her such quarters, while another added that she knew that her father greatly valued personal achievements in the field of alchemy. Bridget immediately interrupted them and said that there was no need to go beyond the limits of what was permitted. She then turned to her father and said that when she thought about community work, one thing that came to mind was whether he was interested in the reconstruction of Hadalun and innovative projects. The emperor asked in surprise where she heard about this. Officials are completely unable to keep their mouths shut. The girl objected that no, it was just that she herself had been interested in this for a very long time. If he has any assignments related to these matters, then she would also like to join. Our heroine immediately realized why she had come here, demonstrating her political interest in order to entrust the failed Marquise of Chensli with a profitable business. This time, she simply cannot ignore this topic. Although she does not like to weave intrigues, Bridget wants Ivanrose to openly go against her father's will for the sake of the homunculi, and in order to avenge her past life. Meanwhile, father began to tell that he planned to move the slums east of the 14th district to the border zone, which is south of the 27th. Bridget exclaimed that this was indeed a wise decision. The current 14th district has served as a barrier against the Legion's forest beasts for 100 years, but now the wild beasts have disappeared due to frequent hunting. In the south, on the contrary, the number of attacks has sharply increased. Therefore, his decision will really improve the situation, because then the value of the 14th region will increase due to trade routes, and in the 27th, there will be fewer losses. Father is simply a genius. Besides, perhaps he should also oblige the slum dwellers to cultivate the land in the wastelands. Although they are poor people who do not pay taxes, taking away their land, and forcing them to cultivate wasteland is too much. They also want to use people as human shields, but it is necessary to remain calm. The third princess continued that although they were poor, they remained subjects of the empire. They do have the opportunity to become full-fledged subjects through migration. She now wants to offer him one idea. What the poor need most now is houses and work. They can allow them to buy houses on credit with a low interest rate in the new areas, and then send them to the imperial labor camp. And just by providing them with work, they will be able to pay the monthly housing payments. In this way, they would be fulfilling their civic duty. The emperor noted that this was indeed a good idea. Ivanrose thought to herself that once they were signed up for the empire's labor force, they would be unable to avoid taxes using people as human shields and charging money for sending them to a deadly place. She knew Bridget was a terrible person, but to that extent. Therefore, she could not resist, and objected that no, under such conditions, the slum dwellers would refuse to move. Now that the East is safe, they want to use them as a human shield. They moved to the 27th region. Do they really think that they will like it? Even if they offer them housing and jobs, their own lives will be more valuable. And if they send the Imperial Guard there for forced resettlement, the ruler's authority with the father will greatly decline. Bridget asked what she proposed to do about it. She didn't think it was better to do nothing. The third princess thought that Ivanrose would have nothing to offer, but she said that she had another option. At the moment, the most important thing is to ensure security. Even without building military installations and calling up armed forces, they will be able to maintain peace in that region. Let them build a large barracks for the knights in the border area. Even if only 10% of the Imperial Guard were to be stationed there during off-duty hours, she was confident that it would be enough to increase the country's defense capability. The emperor exclaimed that if you think about it, this was really not a bad way. According to Bridget's plan, the imperial family will provide housing for the poor, and if one of them dies, the house will again come under their management. And Ivanrose's idea perfectly complemented her plan. Our heroine replied that she was glad that he liked it. Suddenly, the third princess said that it was simply amazing. Did she really want the barracks to be built in such a remote place? The girl noted to herself that she was trying to offend her again, but she said out loud that the well-being of the homunculi could not be more important than the interests and benefits of the empire. The third princess stated that she now truly looked like a member of the imperial family. Hloel thought to herself how good it was that she didn't understand anything. Lying humiliating the homunculi was much better than depriving them of the opportunity to gain rights in the future. Everyone needs food, clothing, and shelter, be it a human or a homunculus. The father turned to our heroine and asked if she had any other ideas on this matter. He would listen to any of her opinions. She replied that she did. After some time, when the conversation was over, Ivanrose led the guests away and wished them a good journey. Then she asked Michaelis if he understood everything correctly and how the other knights reacted to all of this. The young man replied that one was indifferent, two rejected the idea, and only one smiled broadly. Our heroine asked, "What do you mean?" He smiled some strange reaction. Who was it? When the young man replied that he was the third princess's personal knight, the girl noted that he was a little strange. Suddenly, a maid entered the room and announced that Sir Irezo Halston was asking for a personal meeting. Ivanrose immediately asked why he needed it. The assistant replied that he said that he came to pick up the ribbon that the third princess dropped. She had already told him that there was no ribbon here, but he insisted and wanted to check personally. Our heroine replied that she should let him come in. It would be easier to just accept it as the truth. Literally, a moment later, a young man appeared and greeted the seventh princess. The girl immediately told him to make sure there was no tape there and just leave. Looking around, the guy said that he had to check it personally because she belonged to his mistress, so he hoped for her understanding. Awakened that she was nowhere to be found, the young man dropped to one knee and asked for forgiveness for his rudeness. Then he took Ivanrose's hand to kiss it, and she thought to herself that he was quite the puppeteer. This kiss was not like usual, so our heroine abruptly pulled her hand away. Irezo apologized if she didn't like it. He was glad he could kiss her hand. Now it was time for him to go. Looking after him, Michaelis said that he should have removed his hand. Our heroine muttered that he was after all the personal knight of the third princess. The young man objected that he believed that he had not done this on the orders of the princess. Ivanrose thought that it was Bridget's order to embarrass her, but since it wasn't, he must have some ulterior motive or something. Even knowing that the third princess was constantly changing personal knights, he tried very hard to attract her attention because she was the strongest candidate for the post of heir. Therefore, he definitely has a motive. If he is careless in his actions, then he can go further than what is permitted. Agnito muttered that last time it was a princess who extended her hand for a kiss. This time it was a knight who asked her for something similar. It seems that in the imperial palace, everyone perceives personal knights as bargaining chips. Our heroine felt awkward and thought to herself that for the imperial family, homunculi were like objects, after which she added that there was no need to worry because she was not going to do anything like that. The young man asked if this meant that he shouldn't worry about that guy. Because he was her main weapon in the race for the crown, she chose him herself, so she couldn't refuse. The girl muttered that, indeed, while she had him, others were not needed her sword and shield her knight. When she added that she had no intention of confronting the third princess openly, Michaelis asked what would happen if she declared war. Ivanrose replied that then she would have to win, she could not lose him, and would never give him to anyone. The young man stated to himself that he had indeed been imprinted by the seventh princess. After some time, our heroine said that this is why Lord Redmond advised her to wear something more comfortable. The girl couldn't even imagine that the young man could handle children so well. It turns out that he loves them, after which she added that she thought about it a bit and was a little sorry to return like this. Therefore, he wants to suggest that he take a little walk around the city and look around all the surrounding areas. Now it's just time for the festival. During the walk, Ivanrose asked if he was going to continue calling her princess even outside the palace. The young man was a little surprised and asked what he should call her. Our heroine replied that she just likes Ive, let him try calling her that. After the guy hesitantly did this, an image of Michaelis's past immediately popped into her head. But the girl immediately pulled herself together, and they simply began to enjoy the festival taking place in the city. Suddenly, they heard a male voice calling everyone to a certain point, because the Pegasus group was starting their performance. The solo performance of the best singer of their group will begin soon. Please let them show interest. Our heroine was very interested in this, and she expressed a desire to watch. But suddenly, some girl ran into her shouting at someone that she didn't want it, and that they should leave her alone. As a result, Ivan Rose caught the personal knight, and the stranger fell to the ground. Then, from around the corner, came a man's cry, who was indignant that Ramona would regret this. She herself had missed her chance. It dawned on our heroine that before her was none other than the best singer in this empire. Even she, who had no interest in cultural life, had recorded golems with her songs. Every time she was having a hard time, this girl's songs consoled her. It is clear that now she is not popular yet. Then they heard another singer start singing from the stage, and Ramona muttered in disappointment that it was her part. Then she screamed that this skinny man, like withered asparagus, had completely lost his fear. She hoped that the devils would take him away. Was the group really so deaf that they released this girl without a voice? Instead of her, she hoped that they would fail. When Ivan Rose handed her a handkerchief, the girl calmed down a little, thanked her, and said that her name was Ramona Rund. Today she was supposed to stand on this stage. It was her performance. But the son of the head of the troupe got angry that she refused him and sent her away. The young man was outraged by her behavior and exclaimed that she was so impudent, but our heroine stopped him. I thought to myself that Ramona had to put in a lot of effort to achieve success. Just as her song supported Ivan Rose, in difficult times she should also support her now. When the singer calmed down a little, she asked to tell her where she bought this scarf, so that she would definitely return it to her like this. But the girl objected that it was not necessary to return it. Ramona exclaimed that they, the gypsies, always reciprocate help. Our heroine thought that she couldn't reveal her identity, but now there is a more important problem. After which she put her hands on her shoulders and stated that it seemed she still needed help. The singer replied that it was enough consolation, this happens often, so she is fine. Our heroine objected that it was not a question of consolation, but of real help. The interlocutor sighed heavily and replied that this was not something she could help her with. But nevertheless, after a short period of time, the girl was already singing beautifully from the stage. The young man did not understand whether it was really necessary to get so involved in protecting a person he was seeing for the first time. Hloel replied that, of course, sponsoring great cultural figures is also part of the responsibilities of the imperial family. The guy objected that she hadn't even heard that girl sing Blind Trust or something. Our heroine winked at him and replied that she felt it just a strong intuition. The host exclaimed that this was their last performance. The wonderful Ramona Rund sang for them. Applause, please. The girl on stage noticed that the guys were getting ready to leave, so she called out to them. The gypsy's eyes were wet, and she muttered that it was the girl who helped her, wasn't it? How did our heroine manage to do this? Let him tell her his name quickly, please, because she is her benefactor, so she cannot let her go without knowing her name. Ivan Rose thought to herself that even the maid had never held her hand like that, and there had never been any proper hugs before. It was a bit unusual, but not disgusting, after which she said that her name was Yves Hloel, after which she added that it was time for her to go, but they would definitely meet again. Sitting down in the carriage, the girl said that she sang amazingly. Now the guy believes her, or not. Our heroine expects a lot from her in the future. On the way, the girl remembered how she said that it was absolutely necessary to observe this provision on confidentiality. It is worth keeping the connection of the imperial family with the common people a secret, at least for now. Someday it will be revealed, but for now we must try to hide it. Suddenly, Michaela said that she only allowed him to call her Ive, but the number of exceptions increased. Our heroine replied that perhaps it was because she had a precedent with him. Strange, but it was not unpleasant. The young man came to the conclusion that it seems that this is the culture of behavior of common people. They behave this way when they have a friend. The girl thought that then the fact that she did not reveal her real name to the singer was a manifestation of her egoism. When they met next time, she would like to continue communicating in this way. When asked if Agneto had any friends, the guy replied that he didn't know. When Michaelis came into the room, he was surprised that Millard was there. He had not returned before midnight for a long time. The young man muttered that, yes, yesterday, he was not there at all. Even the White Rose of the Empire is no different from all the others. And how did it go with Michaelis? Has the seventh princess already done this with him? The young man decided not to answer such questions, so he explained that it was none of his business. Sylvestian came to his senses and asked for forgiveness for having said too much. The young man noted to himself that if he was allowing this kind of conversation, he must be truly exhausted. So he went to close the curtains and told him to rest. When the sun rises, they will go to sparring. Before going to bed, the knight remembered our heroine's question about whether he had friends. Homunculi are told that there can be no camaraderie between them. He thought so too, but of course there are exceptions. The next day, the Privy Council member, Marquis Limityella, asked if the emperor had a reason for asking the seventh princess to be present. The man exclaimed that he was very proud of her lately. Hadn't he told them that the project of border migration policy was proposed by her? The Marquis asked in surprise in what sense he said that it was the princess's idea, so he thought that it was the third one that was meant not only him, but also everyone present here most likely. His Highness objected that these were just rumors. In fact, it was all made up by Ivanrose. Unlike last time, when there was an informal verbal battle over tea since yesterday, her comments have been recorded and passed on to key people. That time, Bridget was constantly trying to pull the blanket over herself, but now everyone listened to her silently, and the secretaries wrote down her theses. At the meeting, they moved on to the issue of using sandworms on fertile lands. The third princess was indignant, who even came up with the idea to propose this project. Wouldn't it be more correct if not the Marquise? But the one who proposed this idea presented it himself. It was suddenly announced that this proposal came from the man who came up with the idea for the immigration project. All this came from the seventh Princess. Bridget did not understand where they learned all this from. Everyone thought that this was the contribution of the third princess, but unexpectedly, the truth was hidden. How shameful! The girl was beside herself with rage. She thought that Ivanrose would remain silent as before, but now she extended her hands into politics. The personal knight stated that it was better for him to behave quietly so as not to get caught in the crossfire. The perfume smelled so strong that it was even difficult to breathe. The third princess continued to cut flowers and hiss, how dare she disgrace her so much. The girl was just supposed to sit in the corner and act stupid, but instead, she got involved in her affairs. Bridget will make her pay for getting involved in politics. The next day, the young man looked in on our heroine and greeted her. The girl wished him good morning and said that there was some free time before leaving, so she decided to gather everyone and talk. One of the maids noted that the princess takes such care of them, they are proud to serve her. Ivanrose told them to try tea made from herbs that she grows herself. She has a whole plantation on her balcony. The kids really liked it and said it was delicious. The guy noted that he hadn't heard that there were any things planned for today. So was there really some important event going to take place in the palace? Sedella explained that today would be the princess's tea party, a day when the most noble women would gather in the palace of the Hadelamid Empire. So this event was as important as the banquets. The Princess Tea Party is an event where adult princesses gather to discuss political issues. This is the official definition, but it only reflects the superficial essence. In fact, it is not just a gathering of princesses. The latest news and gossip are also discussed there. The main topic of discussion, of course, was always the professional suitability of personal knights at night. Therefore, usually according to an unspoken rule, personal knights were not taken to tea parties. Sometimes they even moved on to discussing indecent things. Just the thought that she would be sandwiched between the older sisters and Rosanite made her tired. The guy noted that it is usually not customary to take personal knights with you to tea parties, which is probably why Hiyu did not give him the schedule for today. He apologizes for it. Rose noted that he didn't seem to understand why they couldn't go together. Therefore, I decided to change the subject of the conversation and said that he had no errands for today, and as soon as he finished his tea, he could return to the dorm. The young man replied that he understood everything. He would be at the training camp. Let him call if necessary. On the way, the girl thought that he always spoke like that, but why today these words sounded especially serious. She is also worried about Bridget. She must be furious that Hloel brought up the idea of resettling the poor. I know as sister countries that she has not yet done anything in response, after which she asked if they had forgotten about her request. The young man replied that of course, if something happens to Sir Agnito, he should tell her about it immediately so that the princess would not worry. Our heroine muttered that, "We'll let them pay more attention to this today." Meanwhile, the young man was in the training camp and watched everyone else fight. All the fights were at the highest level, but they do not think at all about the environment when they fight if they are attacked. then it is unlikely that the knights here will be careful enough to pose problems for the enemy. Sylvestian suddenly appeared and stated that Michaelis had finished his duties early today. When asked what he was thinking about, the guy replied that it was about the impossibility of a multifaceted attack during a battle among homunculi. He also knows that the production volume of magical gems is decreasing. The Philosopher's Stone is created from the solidified surrounding space, and the body of the conquered magical dragon. At this rate, they will soon have to act against him. The young man asked if he thought they would form a squad of homunculi for this, and if this would also affect personal knights. Michaelis replied that yes, the problem is that if they continue to fight only one-on-one, like they do now, they will most likely die at an early age, which is why there were so many casualties among the homunculi in the previous battles with the dragons. The young man stated that it was simply amazing. It seemed that Agnito was now concerned about others. The young man immediately realized that, surely, for what reason was he now thinking about others at all? When Sylvestian left, two other guys approached the guy and said that someone was looking for him and that he should follow them. When he asked who, he was told that it was someone from the imperial family. They couldn't say more, so he should just follow them. On the way, Michaelis thought about choosing a time when he would be alone and bringing him here. Obviously, the choice fell on now. What did they have in mind? There was a thick, protective forest belt around. In such a place, the guard golem would not notice anything. It was too quiet around. The young man heard that members of the imperial family were persecuting each other's subordinates in order to keep their owners under control. Perhaps it is even better that if he becomes the object of their wrath, the princess will remain safe. Stefania, the sixth princess, exclaimed how it annoyed her that Bridget entrusted such things to them. Derek asked her to calm down. Because the third princess would become the ruler in the future, they needed to prove themselves. Upon hearing about the third princess, Michaelis immediately realized that it seemed to harbor a grudge against the seventh for offering her political migration from the slums. The boys reported that they had brought him as she had ordered. The girl replied that they had tried hard, and now they could be free. Then she turned to the young man in a dismissive manner and ordered him to come closer. The boy immediately bowed and greeted the sixth prince and sixth princess, and then introduced himself and said his name. The young man said that he should continue to stand in front of them, but on his knees there was no need to get up. After which, he gave the order to Rurbo and Snoret. To put pressure on him, the guys replied that they understood everything. The girl leaned towards him and whispered that he had better get down on both knees. The boy objected that there were only two people before whom he could kneel: the emperor and his mistress. The personal knights of the sixth prince and sixth princess replied that they understood everything and began to press him with force. But no matter how hard they tried, nothing worked. So Stefania approached him and asked if he knew why he was called here. She had heard rumors that Ivanrose was having a hard time with his training. She was worried about her soft-hearted sister, so it would be better if she helped her by doing a small favor. Michaelis said that if he was not good enough in serving the seventh princess, he should just say so, and he would definitely correct it. The maiden began to say that a whole month had passed since he became the personal knight of the seventh princess, but they said that they had never spent a night together. Doesn't he feel like he's doing something wrong? Serving the princess is one of the most important duties of a personal knight. Apparently, he cannot satisfy his mistress, so she does not call him at night at all. Derek exclaimed that if that was the case, was he sure he was qualified enough to be a personal knight? Could a homunculus with flaws stay in the imperial palace? If a homunculus cannot fulfill his role, then according to the law, he must be re-evaluated, and according to the rules, demoted. Maybe they should create a good reason to kick him out of the palace. The girl supported him and said that it was a good idea. There was no need to bother Sister Eve with trifles. They could figure it out themselves. So there is only one thing left. They just need to make it defective. The young man understood that this was dangerous because he could not directly contradict members of the imperial family. Michaelis understood that if he drew his sword from its sheath while the princess was not around, he could be accused of attempting to kill members of the imperial family. Then they would have grounds to justify their actions. So I got to my feet and came to the conclusion that I simply had to try to survive. Meanwhile, the first Princess Roxandra turned to our heroine and said that she heard that she had not yet tried out her personal knight. The second Princess Corolla asked if this was possible. If she had done everything correctly, then rumors would not have reached them. Ivan Rose understood that this topic would be touched upon but not so directly. Although it is normal for the imperial family to use a homunculus as a legal assistant at night, it is time for them all to come to their senses and definitely get rid of the personal night system. The sisters did not calm down, and the fourth Princess Hestia asked if her homunculus really had any problems in that area. When Hloel replied that no, the fifth Princess Aesel asked if she was sure she had checked it thoroughly. Our heroine answered that yes, she thought to herself, that if she told the truth, they would continue to talk about it. The girl stated that she was lying. If she liked him, she would invite him to her place every night. Bridget replied that yes, maybe she should train him first, then added that she was just joking. Let the seventh princess relax. After that, our heroine thanked them for their concern, but she would deal with her personal night on her own. As long as Sir Agnito behaves appropriately and does not see the need for any additional training, especially from other people, let them be understanding. Bridget stated that this was not the best topic for conversation. Another sister supported her and suggested discussing something else. The third sister asked, "Then what about talking about ways to increase the production of magic crystals?" Our heroine was surprised. Did she really want to talk about the philosopher's stones again? Was there any point in it? Besides, her father was not here. Why discuss it again? Suddenly, the girl heard some sound and realized that it was the sound of Hugh's horn. They were indeed aiming at Michaelis. They are simply crazy. How dare they encroach on the future king of the homunculi? Even if everything ends well now in the future, he may destroy not only the imperial family, but the entire empire. It is necessary to come to his aid as soon as possible, but it seems that the sisters are deliberately dragging out time. Our heroine is sure that this is the work of the third princess. She is taking revenge on her. It's good that not all the sisters indulge her, which means that only the instigator and her accomplices need to be removed. Even Rose decided to use her magical abilities and put Bridget to sleep for a bit. She immediately began to have some kind of clouding, and the girl began to get confused about what she was just talking about. The girl noticed the glow that emanated from our heroine and jumped up to tell her something. But it was too late. The magic started to work, and the third princess simply passed out. After that, Ivan Rose said that the topic must have been so boring that she just fell asleep. It's a pity, but this time the tea party will have to be finished early. She has important things to do, so she will go first. Our heroine was in a hurry, so she decided to take the shortcut through the balcony. Her only thoughts were about Michaelis waiting for her. Meanwhile, the young man was thinking that if he were to get injured now, he would immediately be classified as low-ranking. If only he could draw his sword, everything would be much easier for some reason. Right now, he like a madman wants to see the princess. The sixth princess's personal knight said that he didn't want it either, but the best thing he could do for him now was to cut off his left hand. The boy understood that he had two options: agree or let his hand be cut off and live the rest of his life in agony working in a mine for the extraction of philosopher's stones. The second option is to draw his sword and fight back, but then he will be accused of attempting to assassinate the imperial family and will be painfully executed. Both options are bad, but the second one will at least allow you to vent your anger on them. Even if he can't harm the imperial family, because of the sealing and the oath of loyalty, he can at least get rid of their knights. But the problem is that if he does this, then the responsibility for his actions may fall on the princess. This will give her opponents another reason to mock her. So the young man threw his sword on the ground, stretched out his hand in front of him, and said that he should do what he had to. Michaelis thought to himself that he must be a knight who is worthy of the seventh princess. The opponent froze for a second, and then said that it was necessary to finish this quickly. It was his gratitude for the fact that, even if only for a short time, the princess showed him the outside world. But at the last moment, our heroine appeared, who was able to overcome the protective barrier. The personal knights immediately introduced themselves to her and greeted the seventh princess. The girl looked at the expression on the young man's face and realized that if she had just a little bit more, she would not have made it in time. After which, she said that she seemed to understand what was happening here. Dear brother and sister called Sir Agnito to a quiet and secluded place to torment him. I wonder what their complaints are towards him. The guys answered that there was simply a misunderstanding. She misunderstood everything. They just wanted to help her with training her personal knight. The girl replied that of course help is good, but their methods are somehow questionable. If you look at him, you can see that they decided to put him on his knees on sharp gravel and wanted to put pressure on him with Manhwa. Moreover, they also put two knights against one, although Agnito did not even draw his sword from its sheath, as they will explain it. When the sister began to mumble something unintelligible, our heroine asked her to shut up. The girl understands everything without her explanations. If Michaelis had pulled out his sword, they would have accused him of attacking the imperial family. And the sword should always be with the knight. The guy asked her for forgiveness. Even Rose said that there is something she realized while living in the imperial palace. There is always someone plotting there, and this cannot be ignored. Let her remember this. Now she orders him to defeat these knights who dared to draw their swords before him. The young man's expression immediately changed, and he said that he understood Her Highness perfectly. Our heroine added that as for her brother and sister, she would now teach them a lesson. Then she made them kneel down and began asking questions about who had ordered them to do this. In her hands, she held a golem, which was being recorded. It was captured especially for this occasion. Having heard that, Bridget the girl stated that she knew exactly what she had ordered. Let them say it as it is. Stefania replied that she had said to deprive her knight of the right to be won and to expel him from the imperial palace. Start by discussing a problem with nighttime duties, start a fight, and cause serious injury. And if he resists, then accuse him of attacking the imperial family. If possible, then provoke him to such actions. The brother exclaimed that this was the order of the third princess, they were just doing dirty work. If he was still angry, he could punish their knights. Let him take out his anger on them. But please don't let them report this to the newspaper, because such a scandal could damage their reputation. The sixth princess's personal knight said that she could punish them if it would ease her anger. Then they would gladly accept the punishment. Our heroine replied that she would never do this. And these two are still too immature. Not only can they not protect their knights, but they also use them as a shield. She has no intention of punishing them for the crime of the members of the imperial family. It was just following orders. The guys should not become victims of showdowns between the ruling family. Although she recorded their testimony on the surveillance golem, she will not talk about today's incident. When the boys were happy, she thought that she had still had thoughts of bringing this to public trial. Then she added that she had one condition: they must apologize to Michaelis. The guys were outraged. In what sense does she really want them to apologize to some slave? The girl looked at them and hissed that she was expecting an apology, otherwise they would speak differently. Stefania objected that she could apologize to her, but she was not going to do so to the homunculus. Our heroine ignored all her objections and repeated once again that she should apologize to Agnito. After thinking for a while, the sixth princess forced out that she was asking for forgiveness for humiliating him. The young man did the same with difficulty and asked him to forget about this situation. The young man was very surprised and confused, but replied that he accepted their apology. Ivanrose knew it was completely insincere, but she hoped they had realized their mistake. If they continue in the same spirit and try to oppose it, they will only get the opposite effect. Then she turned to Vint and said that the barrier is simply amazing. It's a shame that such a talent is so abused. Let the girl not blame herself, because today's shame is not on her shoulders, so let her not worry. Then she asked to remove her protective barrier. As she really wanted to leave here, the personal knight of the sixth prince immediately carried out the order. On the way, our heroine asked when she appeared why his hand was held under the sword. The guy is strong enough. If he had stood up to them, he could have neutralized them even on his own, but it looked as if he hadn't even tried to defend himself. Why? Michaelis replied, "Isn't it obvious this is the best he could do?" The girl didn't understand why it was better let him explain it to her right now. She wants to hear it from him. The boy replied that if he were accused of attacking the imperial family, part of the responsibility would fall on her, for he was her personal knight. And besides, she had a goal, and she had already done a lot on the way to it. The young man simply did not want her to apologize to them later, and even more so did not want them to interfere with the implementation of her plan, so he decided that not resisting was the best option. Even Rose thought that if she wanted to be praised, she would do it, but he did not even think that he would be allowed to speak out to clarify the circumstances of the case. After which, she said that she had already said that she would do everything to protect him. Saying so, she meant such situations in times of danger, he should protect himself, and the girl would take care of the consequences. Agnito asked if the princess in the palace had enough strength to do this. Our heroine objected that he was underestimating her. After all, she was a member of the ruling family. The young man muttered that he had offended her with his actions today, and he asked for forgiveness for it. Suddenly, the young man fell to his knees in front of her. The girl exclaimed, "What is he doing?" The blood started flowing again. Let him get up quickly. But he did not react to her words. If he did not obey the orders, he would be in pain because of the imprinting. So our heroine said that she gave up on what he wanted to hear from her at the moment. The young man replied that he truly believed her. He admitted that he had acted wrongly today. She has an important goal, but the guy was worried, thought that her strength was not enough, acted in his own way, was arrogant and stupid. Even Rose could not believe that Michaelis was worried about someone from the imperial family. The young man added that he did not want to disturb her, but in the end, his actions were offensive, so he asks for forgiveness for this. Lowell replied that she forgives, so let him get up from his knees already. But the young man was in no hurry to do this, and added that he thanked her very much for saving him. He was still alive only thanks to her. The girl replied that she had promised that she would protect him. She was simply fulfilling her promise. The young man replied that now he too promised that he would believe her unconditionally. Today, the boy realized that becoming her knight was a real blessing. Until she became empress, he would put his life and soul on the line for her aspirations. Our heroine replied that she would remember this, but she thought to herself that the commander of the rebellion from her past life had chosen her side in this one, which meant she was doing everything right. Then the young man asked her to give him her hand and kissed it as a sign of respect. After some time, Sedella stated that they said that the reason was the failure to perform night duties. Let him forgive them for not preventing these rumors immediately. Our heroine replied that she had nothing to apologize for. It was impossible to fight rumors that were spread intentionally. The maid objected that this too must be stopped. Her fault was that she did not take them seriously. In the future, she would make every effort to stop such nonsense in relation to Her Highness. And now it's time for dinner. Wouldn't she like to rest a little in the room, and he'll bring her some food because she's going to have a hard day today? When even Rose muttered that it was a good idea, the maid asked, "How about having dinner with Sir Agnito?" Our heroine was a little confused, but then said that if he didn't mind, then she agreed. The guy was also confused. Would they really be the only two in the room? But what can you do? This is also part of the duties of a personal knight. Then he answered that, okay. The assistant immediately grabbed him by the hand and said that he then needed to wash himself and let him follow him. After some time, the young man stated that as expected, they knew what they were doing. This was the best way to restore their name in the imperial palace. This did not anger him at all, but he would like to know what exactly the princess had in mind. When he entered her room, our heroine greeted him and told him to come in. Dinner time, Michaelis noted that it was very tasty. The girl said that they could sometimes have dinner together. She believes that the sixth prince and sixth princess should calm down because they have done enough for this. The girl does not intend to disclose the recording from the golem yet. She does not have enough strength right now to enter into an open confrontation with Bridget. The young man asked if she planned to keep this golem. Our heroine replied that yes, she put him in a cage so that he wouldn't fly away. The boy asked if it was legal to hold on to the property of the imperial family like that, and whether she thought it was really worth keeping there. Even Rose replied that yes, she would have problems if someone came into the room and saw him. She even felt a little sorry for him. But let her not worry, now she only needs to think about how to use it, although she will think of something a little later. When the maids appeared in the room to take away the dishes, the girl said that she would make the tea herself, and they could go and rest. After everyone left, our heroine said that, since everyone had left, they could now speak more freely. The young man noted to himself that the princess was very beautiful, and she was not like the others. He had previously been mistaken in his judgments. Suddenly, she said that most likely Michaelis had already guessed, but today she wanted to ask him for something. Will the young man stay overnight in her room tonight? The guy was confused, but he thought that since something like this had happened today, it was necessary. Then he drank a cup of tea in one gulp, and our heroine did not understand what he was doing. After which, he stood up, began to unbutton his shirt, and say that if he had remembered it correctly, he would immediately begin to perform his duties. It would be good if she expressed her preferences in advance as to how he should properly look after her. The girl immediately began to stop him and say that he had misunderstood everything she thought that he would guess. Our heroine didn't mean it that way. We just need to sleep in her room. They only need rumors, it will be enough, if they just see him leaving her room in the morning. The knight grabbed his head and thought how ashamed he was. Everything was so simple, and he took it too seriously. What was wrong with him? Was it really because of the impression? The girl immediately came up to him and touched him, after which she asked if he felt better. Because it was calming magic, the guy answered that, yes. Ivan Rose said that in order for the rumors to spread, it needs to be done regularly. How about once a week, for example, on Wednesday? The young man replied that he understood. Hloel added that tomorrow morning he would have to feign tiredness because they had to fool even the maids. The next day, our heroine learned that a public bathhouse built by the Leuciard Company had opened. They managed to attract enough attention. The profit turned out to be even greater than expected. Everything went more successfully than in the past life. The third princess must have heard this news by now. She's probably just oozing friendliness right now. You can praise yourself for a good job, but until you praise yourself, no one will praise you. When Sedella came to see her, the girl said that she did a great job. Thanks to her, everything went well. After the maid replied that it was just her job, our heroine noted that she was so modest. Let her continue in the same spirit. Suddenly, other servants appeared in the room and reported that the thing she asked for had been delivered. Then, at her request, a young man was called, who immediately asked what was in the chest. Our heroine opened it and said that she told him that she would give him something suitable. The young man took his hands and admired that the sword was simply incredible. It was a pity that very soon the new weapon would be stained with blood. After which he explained that very soon there would be a competition in hunting animals. These competitions take place on an island of wild mountains and forests called Galapagon. A barrier fences off these monsters from people. To determine the winner, the number of killed monsters is counted. Beasts are an indispensable ingredient in alchemy, so for alchemists, the competition was like a harvest festival. And the empire, which valued alchemy, simply had to pay special attention to this event. After which she said that, isn't that the purpose of the weapon? Let him follow her, because she wants to do something. Then our heroine led him to the balcony and said that it was necessary to observe etiquette. Let Michaelis Agnito become her sword, and overcome all enemies, be a shield that protects from danger. Let him swear allegiance to her. The boy understood that this was an oath of allegiance, so he replied that he swears that even if the world turns away from her, he will remain by her side, and if the orders cost him his life, he will gladly give it up for her. Even Rose said that now, bending his knee, he took her oath as a knight. From now on, he belongs to her. The young man replied that yes, until his death, he would serve her with soul and body. He swears to serve only her. Hloel replied that she was giving him a position worthy of his honor and courage. She was accepting the oath of Michaelis Agnito. After which, our heroine said that she simply really wanted to hold this ceremony. For knight's ceremony is as important as the first snowdrop after a long winter for birds. But when it comes to homunculi, this formality is usually omitted. Usually there are minor events, or the head of the training camp might say a few parting words. And the seventh princess did everything as expected, so the guy said that he wanted to thank her for the sword. The girl replied that since that was the case, then let her take a prize place in the upcoming competitions. The young man noted to himself that she had not said first place, but simply a prize place. His princess had no competitive spirit at all. Then the young man should show her how pleasant it is to win, after which he said that he swears to serve her with honor. After some time, they arrived at the island, and our heroine explained that it was called Galapagon. The guy noted that it was not crows that were flying in the sky, but Harpy's Evenrose replied that all the inhabitants of the island were monsters. This place is the home of Galamuta, a demonic dragon known for its power and cruelty. Then the girl tied her ribbon to the sword of her personal knight and wished him to be careful. Michaelis immediately kissed her hand and said that there was no need to worry about him too much. When the homunculi were ready to enter the dark forest, our heroine began to worry that he would return safe and sound. Meanwhile, the demonic creature was furious and thought that it would definitely destroy these incomprehensible creatures. Hundreds of years ago, when God turned away from the world, a demon dragon was born that shook the whole world. Hadelamid sent homunculi against him. Finally, the dragon Galamut, known for his strength and ferocious cruelty, was defeated. The dragon that was the legacy of the magic mines contributed to the development of the empire, and its habitat was captured by a powerful man at that time, and the remaining magical beasts began to be used as materials for alchemy. All this happened thanks to the competitions in hunting animals. Michaelis told Sylvestian that it would not be easy to defeat him, so he should not rush. The young man replied that he did not think these were the words he should hear from his strongest competitor. Then the boys smiled, wished each other good luck, and then went on their way. Meanwhile, our heroine was very worried. She understood that there shouldn't be any big problems, but still. Suddenly, Rosinante appeared next to her, declaring that today's glory would belong to her, because he promised to crush the greatest beast, for the sake of the white rose of the empire. All members of the ruling family want their homunculi to be the best, and if not, they simply get rid of them. The imperial family does not take direct part in hunting competitions, but only lowly orders the homunculi to participate. Instead of the knight's comfort, they only think about how to use him as a tool for victory, but one can at least worry about them a little, after which she replied that she hoped that it would be so. Meanwhile, at the table, the girls were talking about how they had heard that pearl ink was popular in their day. The mother of one of them had just received it as a birthday present, and she would like to get it too. They heard that the youngest countess's affairs were going well, and they said that the count's business connected with the public baths was a great success, so they congratulated her. One of them objected that she was interested in something. The price of magic stones with which you can heat water is rapidly increasing, isn't it? If this continues, the more clients, the more it will go into the minus, won't it? Anais replied that that's why they found a way to eliminate the need for it. The water is heated in a special oven in the oven at the nearby bakery, and then fed through pipes. This is the wisdom given to them by their family benefactor and partner. They were previously tasked with a project to improve the hygiene of the empire's residents, but due to their reliance on magic stones, the risk of failure was high. If it were not for the help of a benefactor, their family would most likely not have avoided bankruptcy. When the seventh princess approached them, the girl said that she was the benefactor. Bridget heard them exclaim that she really was her secret partner. Anais replied that yes, the recipe for the soap used in the baths was also invented by the princess, and it is nowhere else to be found. Ivanrose replied that she was also interested in improving the personal hygiene of citizens, so she wanted to support the countess. She thinks that the bath business will be a great help in preventing the epidemic. The girls were delighted that she had recently captured a personal knight, received a room of fresh greenery from His Majesty, and now also a bath business. They even said that she was participating in His Majesty's innovative project. It was simply incredible. Our heroine thanked them for their attention and said that she had to go, after which she called the countess for a few words. When they had gone some distance, Lowell said that they had often exchanged greetings through the maid, but after that day they had never met in person. Anais tried very hard. The girl objected that it was all only thanks to her. Did she see how the third princess looked at them? Ivanrose replied that yes, even her hair stood on end. The countess noted that because their family's affairs had not gone downhill, she must have been very angry, and she was worried that this anger would eventually spill out on her. Our heroine replied that she would be ready for this, but she noted to herself, remembering the sixth prince and princess, that this had already happened to some extent. Suddenly, Anais said that she could not help but ask her this question, whether she planned to become empress. The third princess tried to destroy their family business and replace them with her protégé. She is the first candidate for the throne, so no one even tried to help them. Except for the seventh princess, everyone now knows that she helped them, and this will be seen as an intention to oppose Bridget. But not only that, in this way, the girl seemed to have declared that she would lay claim to the throne. If this is not in her plans, then why? When our heroine answered, "What if it is so?" the countess immediately fell to her knees in front of her. Ivanrose immediately asked her to get up because it hurt. But the girl looked into her eyes and said that she swears that until her death, she will follow only the princess. Chloe thanked her and said that she would show how wisely she had acted in choosing her. Then they approached the other guests and asked what they were talking about. The girls answered that they were wondering who would win the competition, probably one of the personal knights. Last year, the third princess's personal knight won, but now there are two more strong contenders: the eighth princess's knight Sylvestian and the prison monster Agnito. Our heroine immediately remembered that in her past life, Millard had won, and since he became the Knight of Rosinante, he had won all the competitions and duels in the imperial palace and dedicated them to the White Rose. But then a young man came along 2 years later and took the lead in everything. So does it mean that Michaelis will win this time? Why was she so excited? Before she just had to congratulate the winner and his owner, but now she herself could find herself in their place. I wonder if her previous life was always so gloomy and dull, even though she didn't care about competition. But for some reason, she always put herself down. Her attitude towards herself was simply outrageous, but now she has people who are ready to follow her in this life. Michelise is also on her side. She needs to become more self-confident. So when she was asked who she thought would win this time, the girl replied that she was sure it would be Sir Agnito. Suddenly, she had a strange feeling as if someone was looking at her. It turned out that it was the eighth princess. It seems that the rumors about her being omnipresent are true. Then the girls decided to return to the heavenly ship to their quarters to rest a little. Suddenly, our heroine called out to Calix Limitiella and asked if he could keep her company. It was he who, at the last imperial banquet, deliberately slipped her a glass of strong alcohol. What did he want from her? The young man said that he really wanted to meet the princess again. It was a pity that last time they parted in such a way. Our heroine replied that of course she was lucky that they broke up before she got drunk. The young man replied that he would very much like to apologize for that day. He had no intention of deliberately getting her drunk. The law in the imperial palace states that the first glass received from another person must be drained. Refusal is considered rude, but he certainly did it on purpose to show that he was a gentleman, and as it were to save her if she gave him her glass, she would remain in debt, after which she asked what he needed. She knows that everything was set up for some benefit. So what does he want? When the boy said that it was a little awkward to talk here, the countess told her that she shouldn't trust his words. What was he even thinking when he did this? And when the plan failed, he suddenly decided to save his tarnished honor or what? Our heroine noted to herself that she seemed to have overdone it a bit. She didn't know that she had such a side, after which she said that if he had a personal request and he didn't want to talk about it now, then let him talk about it later. The guy thanked her and said that he hoped that they would meet again. He wished her a good time. The countess noted that it seemed like it was going to rain. They had just arrived on the ship, but she would need to go back and look around. Meanwhile, the young man left his mark on the monsters and thought that now they should be protected. But he considered these monsters to be just some small fry. A stronger monster was needed to win. Suddenly, he felt that someone was approaching him, so he immediately launched a spinning kick. Turning around, he saw a strange greenish substance and thought that it was slime. Why did he always come across some kind of nasty thing? But in reality, the young man needs the corpses of slimes and rockworms. When Albert asked her why she needed them, since they were completely useless as an alchemical material, the girl replied that she was trying to make a solvent from slime essence. With the help of this substance, it will be possible to dissolve the outer shell of stoneworms and take their internal organs. The youth exclaimed, "Isn't it from their internal organs that they make what is used at night? So that's what she needs them for." Our heroine objected that it wasn't exactly for that these stamina potions improve blood flow. If they conduct research, it might be possible to create a cure for heart disease. This medicine can be a salvation for many sick people. It will also be a big step for the empire, which is weak in medicine. Albert replied that when the competition is over, he will get any monster corpses she wants. Therefore, our heroine's personal knight decided that he must definitely help the princess. After some time, after destroying many more plant species, the guy came to the conclusion that this would be enough. When he decided to put his mark on them, one of the buds suddenly opened. Suddenly, a voice came from behind, saying that the pollen from the Nepenthe flower is poisonous. It was the sixth princess's personal knight Vint, who added that one should not inhale it, otherwise there will be problems. If the pollen spreads, the whole forest will be filled with this nastiness. The guy replied that it is not so bad, in any case. It is a hunting ground. The girl asked if that was why he threw them like that. Anyone would see in it personal hatred for slimes and stoneworms. When asked where he was going to go, the guy replied that he would go through the swamp if she was going to go in that direction, then let her choose another direction, because he had already cleared everything there, after which he asked if she knew where to find the dragon. The homunculus replied that she knew he was strong enough, so she thought there would be no problem if she told him, after which she paved the way for him with the help of her magical abilities and wished him luck, to which the knight thanked her. Meanwhile, Sylvestian fought with a harpy that was not so easy to defeat. But the young man was not one to be timid, so he managed to cut her in half. Then suddenly he heard some more steps behind him, so he immediately swung his sword. but it turned out to be Michaelis who blocked his blow. When asked if he was also looking for the cave, Millard replied that no, he was looking for the golden-maned behemoth. And what kind of beam is this anyway? Agnito replied that it was made by the night vent, it should lead to the dragon's cave. After some time, the boys reached that very place and saw that there seemed to be fireflies there. But they were wrong, because a huge otherworldly creature appeared next, roaring menacingly. Sylvestian noted that he was quite big. The guy replied that he was not greedy, so he would only take the head. Then he ran forward, shouting that he would help him, since the guy was unsure whether he could handle it or not. Millard ran after him, saying that the fur was very valuable, so he should be more careful. After a short period of time, the young man stated that they had somehow dealt with him quickly. It was necessary to leave a little of themselves for the next year. Michaelis said that it was necessary to find their leader, despite the fact that all his relatives were dying, and moaning pitifully, he did not even show his nose. Sylvestian asked, "Didn't he kill him from the very beginning? Doesn't he remember such a huge one with glowing eyes?" The young man was surprised that it was the leader they were all somehow weak, after which they heard some strange sounds. It was Irazo Halston, who asked if they had killed everyone, if collusion between two potential winners wasn't a violation of the rules. Millard said that if you go around the rock cliff, you can find a nest of spiders. How about hunting the Spider Queen? The young man exclaimed that he was so merciful, he was truly worthy of being next to the White Rose. Thanks to him for the advice, but let him not make a mistake himself. If he doesn't collect enough points, then he will have a hard time at night. He understands what Halston is talking about. The Imperial White Rose is no different from the others. Sylvestian was indignant. What kind of speeches were these? He should show respect to the Imperial family. Irizo replied that he likes him, so it's a little offensive when he speaks like that. But as for loyalty to the Imperial family, it's better to say that more often to the monster of the floating prison. Then, from their reaction, he realized that they did not intend to communicate, so he asked them to calm down and said that he understood everything, he was a smart guy, so he would go his own way. Michaelis noted that he doesn't look like someone who serves the royal family, and he has a sharp tongue, so it's strange that no one touches him. Sylvestian replied that he had heard that they had once intended to get rid of him, but not because of loyalty. He himself knows very well that in the preparatory courses, the homunculi are subjected to cruel training in order to create competition among them. Sword fights are the most common thing, and to get rid of the weak, they may well arrange survival games. But there is also a test for expulsion. He heard that he was almost thrown out because of bad results. Agnito muttered that the third princess's personal knight was lagging behind it was hard to even imagine. Millard replied that he was not 100% sure, but he heard that someone voluntarily gave up the test in favor of little Halston, so he was able to survive. Suddenly, a heavy downpour began, and the ground under the feet of the young people began to crack. At the last moment, Sylvestian managed to grab Michaelis so that he would not fall into the abyss. Then an incomprehensible substance began to appear from under the ground, and an ominous voice said that homunculi were disgusting creatures. Millard muttered that it was probably some kind of evil spirit that decided to show itself during the rain. When Michaelis muttered that there were too many of them, Sylvestian explained that it was one organism, the spirit of the dragon Galamut. The young man said that even on his best days, his strength did not reach even a 10,000th part of his strength. Suddenly, the dragon roared that it was a homunculus and began to bind Millard with its power. Then he opened his mouth wide and began to lean towards Sylvestian, and Michaelis did not know what to do. When the young man found himself in an incomprehensible space, he could not understand what was happening and where he was, whether there was an evil spirit inside, and he was simply swallowed up. Then his head began to split suddenly, and the image of Michaelis with the seventh princess appeared before him. At the banquet, in honor of the 18th anniversary of the White Rose of the Rosenit Empire, although Sylvestian was considered an honorary knight because of its owner, but there was one thing. Walking next to the White Rose, he could not concentrate his attention on the hostess. His gaze wandered around the ceremonial hall all the time, looking for another girl. The knight within him, who went against the system, awakened a sense of shame in this homunculus. Suddenly, sunlight shone upon him, and Michaelis appeared right in front of him, asking if he was okay. Looking at the dead dragon, Millard said it felt like someone had climbed into his soul. Agnito explained that it was quite possible Galamut had the ability to penetrate the mind, so one had to be careful. Literally, a moment later, it turned out that the dragon was not completely defeated, as it had regained its strength. The young man stated that things were bad. It seemed that he had become even bigger than he had been before. The otherworldly existence immediately rushed to attack them and hissed that they were disgusting creatures. Our heroine's personal knight did not wait for him to attack, so he decided to outwit him. Having jumped on him from the other side, the guy immediately struck, and the dragon roared in pain. But instead of calming down, the demon began to envelop Michaelis with her magical power. But to his great surprise, the spell had no effect on him. The guy only said that his mood had worsened, after which he swung and struck the demonic creature with all his might, thereby depriving it of its head. Having instantly recovered, the dragon hissed that now everything was clear to him. He was the most disgusting of all, since he was the king of the homunculi. The young man muttered that it seemed that dying silently did not apply to him. Thanks to the previous attack, he found its core, and the next one will send him to the next world. When the demonic creature laughed loudly, the boy asked what he saw that was funny. The monster replied that the king of the homunculi was angry, and he realized one important thing: the young man was imprinted, and he already had a master. After which he began to disappear, saying that he would definitely kill him because it was necessary to get rid of the owner for the sake of the clan. Sylvestian didn't understand what was going on where this creature had gone. Agnito did not explain anything to him, but simply started running. The only thing in his head was that he needed to save the princess. Meanwhile, the demon appeared where the imperial family was, with their guests, and people shouted that this was the same creature that managed to partially materialize due to human thoughts. The third princess remained calm and shouted for all the knights to line up immediately, after which she waved her hand forward and ordered them to go on the attack. Watching all this, our heroine thought only about why Michaelis had not returned yet. Only her and Rosinit's personal knights still haven't returned. Could something have happened? Suddenly, a voice sounded in her head, which declared that it had found the hunter, and the beast runs. The girl did not understand why it sounded right in her head, and her body stopped obeying. It turned out that it was the dragon speaking, who stated that he saw before him the man who had imprinted the king of the homunculi, and that he would take revenge on him by taking her life. The girls immediately started shouting that everyone needed to disperse and put up a protective barrier. Vint shouted at the seventh princess, "What is she doing? Let her get out of here quickly!" But Ivanrose stood motionless and could not move. Then the creature released its magical power in her direction. Our heroine thought that the end had come for her and nothing could save her. But at the last moment, a young man materialized in front of her and repelled the attack. Then the young man turned around and informed Her Highness that he had returned, after which he shouted, "How dare the dragon touch the seventh princess? Now this will be the end for him. His core will be split into so many pieces that he will never be able to put them back together." The monster roared in pain and finally hissed that it was necessary to get rid of the king of the homunculi. Ivanrose was surprised that he recognized Michaelis, although he had not yet awakened. By the way, where did he go? When she screamed his name loudly, the guy came out of the thick black smoke and stated that she was calling him. The seventh princess couldn't control her emotions, so she immediately rushed into his arms. When the girl said that she was very glad that he was not hurt, the young man began to take off his jacket, and Ivanrose did not understand why he suddenly started doing this. But when he threw the outer garment on her, she realized that he simply wanted to help her so that she would not get wet. Our heroine felt that his hands were shaking, so she decided to use warming magic. But the young man himself took her hand and said that he was very glad that she was all right. Chloel touched his face and replied that she thanked him very much. It was only thanks to him that she was still alive. Everything would be fine. Now he would warm up soon. When the mental embodiment of the dragon disappeared, the rain stopped as if it had never been there. The restoration of the interior of the outpost progressed at an accelerated pace, and the hunting competition ended with the awarding of the deserved winner. After some time, the girl thought that she was very tired, and said that on the special day, it would be good for him to rest a little in the dormitory. But today is Wednesday, so I'll have to work overtime. Let him forgive me. The young man replied that he was flattered by her concern, but he was fine, so he should rest peacefully. Imprinting is a truly cruel contract. If the owner is in danger, the threat felt by the imprinted is so strong that it can paralyze the heart. When the owner dies, this feeling is already similar to a strong psychological shock. In very rare cases, due to the death of a contractor, homunculi would go mad and lose their human form. When the dragon said that we need to get rid of the homunculus king, did he mean that Michaelis is the strongest? King is too honorable a title, but if not power, what then he meant it would be good if one could ask someone about it. Galamut clearly used his ability to penetrate the mind to find his mistress. He doesn't know about the other dragons, but since he called him the king of the homunculi, there's a good chance the demon considered him his most sworn enemy. In that case, his existence puts the seventh princess in danger. In that case, then the easiest way to get rid of the threat is to terminate their contract. However, if a person appears whom he does not want to give up at all, then he is simply obliged to protect her. The next day, the maid reported that the bath business was flourishing successfully. Thanks to her, he now has the means and free time for social and political activities. Let him tell what it's like to become a rich princess. Our heroine answered that it is good when you can provide for your family on your own. Then she handed her a piece of paper with an address and asked her to go to this place. Sidella stated that this was one of the places where she wanted to invest. The maid heard that they were looking for a new owner. Ivan Rose noted to herself that she had prepared everything for her, a luxurious townhouse on the southern part of the river. She had hired maids there for 6 months, so she was sure that now Arfel could go there and have a wonderful rest. She will like it, won't she? After which she added that she should go there where they will meet her and tell her exactly what she will need to do. The maid replied that, well then, before her move, she would call Michaelis to her. When the guy came, the girl said that she thought that he was already the strongest, so he didn't need a combat magic stone. In this regard, she chose the one that he might like. The young man said that it was interesting which one it was. It was a magical stone of barrier and protection from temperature changes, which was inserted into the sheath. Isn't this the best protective stone, knowing his weakness in protective barriers? She chose it especially for him, so he replied that he liked it very much. Our heroine said that she thought he would be disappointed because it was normal magic, but in fact she specifically chose the one that could be installed on a scabbard and not on a sword. Agnito noted to himself that she was thinking about the possibility of a repeat of the situation where he would not be able to draw his sword like that time, after which he said that she addresses him as a knight. Therefore he believes that he too should behave more respectfully. Wouldn't it be more correct to speak formally even when they are alone? But the girl objected that everything suits her. She noted to herself that she did not want a gap to form between them because of polite treatment. The less formal, the better. After which she added that she had heard that other brothers and sisters, when alone with their personal knights, also asked them to call themselves by their short names. The young man immediately blushed and said that usually they only ask to do this at night in bed. He knows that this was said with other intentions. However, if in the palace she decides to say something similar not to him, but to another homunculus, then he will certainly misunderstand her. If you think about it, there is a strict hierarchy between the imperial family and the homunculi. So how can it be allowed to call someone from the imperial family by their first name? Then she immediately remembered the moment from her past life, when Michaelis called her briefly and wondered what it was then. After which she said that she had a question. She understood the intention of the imperial family to allow the use of short names. But what does it mean when another person's personal knight calls him by this name, one who did not give his consent to it? The guy immediately got angry and asked who allowed this towards her. Were they really Erezo Halston? Ivan Rose noted to herself that actually it was him, but only in a past life. After which she replied that, no, you just need to imagine that such a situation has arisen. She is interested in what this means. Agnito replied that there were only 2 options. Either they despised her greatly, or they wanted to become her personal knight and spend the night with her. If such a request came from a homunculus, it seems like he was a very impudent and daring guy. Our heroine did not understand how it was even possible that Michaelis wanted to do this to her. Suddenly, the guy asked if it meant that she broke off relations with this homunculus and then made him her personal knight. The girl decided to say that he simply died. The guy exhaled and said that thank God. Although he felt a little sorry for him, Even Rose noted to herself why it sounded like it was a pity that he didn't personally kill him. The young man asked why she had declared today a day off, because there was something planned for today, wasn't there? Our heroine noted that he was very smart and said that she wanted to visit a very important person for her, namely a teacher of alchemy who has been teaching it for a long time. When the boys arrived at their destination, some small creature immediately rushed towards the girl and began to lick her. She greeted him and said that they hadn't seen each other for a long time. The young man stated that there were a lot of golems around. Ivanrose replied that yes, they were made by Mother, since she was a golem alchemist. She then noted that there was too much dust around and asked him to wait a little while. It was necessary to clean up. When asked if she would really clean here herself, the girl replied that there was a cleaning golem. After all, she was a student there, and these are the very basics. After this, she also connected her magical abilities, and the books themselves began to return back to the shelves. The young man asked in surprise what she had just done. Our heroine replied that she had simply put the books in their places. There was nothing complicated about it, but the guy objected that she was wrong. In an instant, she calculated the trajectory of movement of several objects and placed them on the necessary shelves. Such calculations are impossible without good spatial perception skills. Ivanrose thought to herself that it was true what they said, that laziness is the engine of progress, and she was even praised for this very laziness. Michaelis added that calculating coordinates is very important for magical attacks in long-range combat. It is very likely that she has an innate talent. The girl replied that perhaps he is right, but she is not very strong in combat magic. The young man replied that well, it was his job to minimize her need to use combat magic. If you think about it, he knew that she had magic, but he didn't think that she also did alchemy. Our heroine replied that just like her mother, she did something like golems. When asked what it seemed to mean, Ivanrose said that it was easier to show than to explain, so let him follow her. Then she showed a stone heart in a flask. The guy asked if she used alchemy on a person. She knows that human alchemy is forbidden. Does she really want to organize a coup? How much she planned to hide it from him? But Loel objected that nothing of the sort. She is only doing some research, trying to create something like human organs from golems. The #1 cause of death in the country is cardiovascular disease. It is difficult to solve it with only magic and herbs, so she began to study the option of creating replacement body organs. She noted to herself that she had been doing this even when she was not thinking about winning the throne. Then she added that later, this research would be handed over to the Imperial Alchemical Society. The cost of research was so high that she could not afford it yet. But since she was already here, she needed to deal with one more businessman. Our heroine will create a guardian golem that they can use together, and in the meantime, let him choose a beautiful name for it. It seems that the teacher will return late today. If they are late, they will simply spend the night there. There is a guest room in the attic. She gives it to him. When asked where she would spend the night, the girl replied that there was another room, so she would stay in it. After some time, when Ivanrose fell asleep, she found herself in some kind of incomprehensible space. The girl immediately thought that the only one who was capable of this was her teacher. The mentor stated that her abilities had clearly become much better. He who has reached the peak in the field of mana is rewarded with eternal youth. This applies not only to alchemy and magic, but also to the art of swordsmanship. Such creatures do not appear every century, and one of them is the Sage of the Spruce Forest. As the former tutor of the 6th Empress, he was responsible for the alchemy lessons of Princess Ivanrose under the direct orders of Her Majesty. When asked why he decided to meet in a dream, since she wanted to see him in person, the man replied that he had spent a lot of energy, so he went to Crescent Lake to recover. By the way, something is bothering her since she decided to visit him personally. The girl replied that she had actually returned to the past and thought that he would help her understand how this had happened. The master noted that it was surprising she was telling such things so simply, even though he knew it before. But still, our heroine exclaimed, meaning he already knew where he got this information from. Why did she come back? Then the man muttered that if he told her he would reveal a great secret. Ivanrose asked if this could somehow harm the mentor, or if it would somehow violate the laws of the world. The teacher replied that it would just be a bit of a shame if he just told her that Hloel noted that making fun of her was still his hobby. The master explained that the reason for her return was the regression ceremony with the help of the philosopher's stone great alchemy and magic. Ivanrose thought to herself that her assumptions were correct, but she could not even imagine that the philosopher's stone was involved in the matter. After which she asked who could pull off something like this. The teacher replied that since it was she who moved into the past, He thought it was possible to assume that it was done by the one who loved her more than life. Our heroine thought for a bit, and then exclaimed that it was really the mentor who did this, and that was why he needed to restore his strength. But the man objected that she had only guessed half right. It was not just one person. The girl asked if it was her maid, but the master replied that she was ordinary. It was an unreasonable assumption. Our heroine muttered that there was no one else. The teacher noted that she was generally slow-witted. The ritual of return requires a huge amount of mana, and has its price. The philosopher's stone just meets these requirements. However, only the emperor can use the philosopher's stone at his own discretion. And now, the last question: who was the emperor before her return? Our heroine was shocked by the information she heard, and muttered that at that time, the emperor was Michaelis Agnito. Meanwhile, the guy said that he should show himself already since he called him here. The teacher replied that there was no need to be so suspicious. He just wanted the young man to appreciate the radiance he had worked hard to create. In fact, he had many roles, but today he was here to answer his questions. Therefore, she did not call the student with her Michaelis immediately understood that he was the sage from the spruce forest. After which, he immediately asked for forgiveness, introduced himself, and said that he was the personal knight of the seventh princess. The man objected that the king of the homunculi had no need to be polite to him. The young man noted that the dragon also called him that, but he did not understand why this particular nickname. The sage explained that since he was born with the ability to command all the homunculi, shouldn't he be called a king? Agnito muttered that only an emperor could do such a thing, couldn't he? The master replied that this was not the same as forced submission through imprinting or restrictions. This was the power of the king that was born in him, but had not yet awakened. As soon as she awakens, he will have power that goes beyond the imperial one. It is he who will free all the homunculi from the oppression of the imperial family. It is then that all the homunculi will obey only him. The guy muttered that he didn't believe it. Besides, he wasn't the type to be responsible for someone he thought he wasn't fit for the role. The sage objected that one must believe in oneself. In his past life, he too had no desire to obtain the throne, but in the end, he became an emperor and freed his people. Michaelis asked in the sense of, in a past life, does he really want to say that? Now the guy is living his life for the second time. Is that possible? The master explained that it was someone who could not bear the loss of a loved one and performed a ceremony of returning in time. The young man noted that it was somehow stupid to turn back time, just to save the life of one person while changing the fate of people and all the events of past years. He doesn't think that such a risk was justified. It's unfair that someone would have a chance to change everything. Then he said that earlier the dragon told him that he was the king of the homunculi. Does the master know how this happened? The man replied that there was a limit to how much magic and alchemy could affect beings of his level. Since he is like a spirit, he believes that memories of a past life remain regardless of the regression of the body itself. He has already met the awakened Michaelis in the past, so he recognized it. The young man asked if this meant that he too was watching him, because of his actions and achievements in the past. When the master replied that he was the young man, said that he was then sure that he knew who had turned back time. After the teacher replied that perhaps, but what did he then plan to do with this man? Agnito replied that he would kill him. After some time, when everyone had already woken up, the girl thought that no matter how much she thought about it, it all made no sense. How could she be liked by that Michaelis, so that he would turn back time because of love for her? What was in his head anyway? Suddenly, a young man appeared behind her, and our heroine asked how he knew that she was in this place. The guy replied that he was from above. He called her for a long time, but she didn't respond. Then he threw a sweater over her and said that she might catch a cold. Even Rose didn't try to question her mentor's words, but was the reason he called her Eve without permission in her past life, because he wanted to get her? Then she quickly turned away from him and thought about how she could look at him calmly after that. It is necessary to calm down, because Michaelis from the past life and this one are two different people. Now they have started everything anew. Suddenly, the young man reported that her mentor had appeared to him in a dream the previous night, and he asked to give her the magic scroll. The girl muttered in confusion that the mentor very rarely teaches magic. When Hloel asked what they were talking about, the young man began to remember how he said that he wanted to kill him. Since now he knew about all the events of the future, if such a person became an enemy of his princess, then things were bad. Even his very existence was a threat. The mentor asked if anyone would dare to go against him. Agnito answered that such things must be thought about in advance, and everything must be nipped in the bud. The young man is worried that he might get in the princess's way and interfere with her plans. The teacher stated that he was ready to do anything for her. The guy replied that it was true. The sage said that then let him awaken the power of the king. Then he too will be able to return the memories of his past life and find out who turned back time. To himself, he thought that if the words of the sage were true, and he knew the one who turned back time, this man and his powers could be useful to the princess. In other words, Her Highness will need him more than she does now. Therefore, he replied that it was nothing serious. He simply learned that he could become even more useful to his princess. But to himself, he thought that he had to awaken the king's power in the shortest possible time. A week later, our heroine was training to create a silver arachne. At one point, she stated that it seemed that the network was now working much better than before. The young man noted to himself that this was such a clever skill, the net would not cause any harm if it did not move, but as soon as it moved, it would slice through the victim's body like 1,000 blades, absolute magic of defense and attack. If the princess used this on him, he wouldn't be able to fight back, even if he was unimprinted. But that's it, it's considered barrier magic, so the guard golems simply bypass it. After which he asked the butterfly if she also thought this magic was incredible. Amber is the guardian golem of Eve and Michaelis, who leaves behind black pollen when in a bad mood. Our heroine noted that the creature seemed to be in a great mood today. Just look at how it shines, and those golden scales falling from its wings, just lovely. The young man said that only a week had passed, but the results of the training were already amazing. The girl replied that she thought it was because of her practice in creating organs. The young man asked, "How about starting to train with people? Most likely it would be they, and not some demons who would want to harm her." "There is just the right place here," the girl exclaimed. "Does he really want her to use magic on him? For nothing, have you forgotten what happened that time on the first day of training? Moreover, if they do as he proposed, then being her knight, he will not even be able to draw his sword from its sheath." Michaelis objected that he had her gift, the magical barrier stone. Did she really want to call someone else? Shouldn't they keep everything a secret? The girl agreed with him, but the magic that her mentor taught her could be deadly for him. Agnito replied that there is some truth in this. Probably it is something like her embrace. So let her be sure that even if she dies, it will be the happiest death. The young man will not be against it, but still hopes that the grip will not be fatal, and he can hope for the mercy of the princess. Even Rose was surprised that he hadn't said anything like that in his past life. So what was all this about now? What kind of conversations were these? He understood that he was flirting with her. Therefore, she became embarrassed and said that she had asked him not to use the tricks that they had been taught. While the young man was thinking about the fact that they were taught something completely different, the girl added that she just needed to not overdo it so they could start tomorrow. On the way home, the guys ran into the 8th princess, and her personal knight Evenrose thought that the last thing she wanted to see right now, what kind of law is this? It was clear from her that Rosanite was still angry with her because of the loss on the hunt. She didn't even look in her direction. But in her past life, it was she who was dishonest in giving her poison. Her abnormal obsession with Michaelis cost her her life. This is the reason for her hatred towards her. Although she understands her now, she was still disappointed by her and that act, and she is sometimes even offended that she cannot make a claim for it, because in this life there has never been anything like that. The sister did not understand what was going on, and why she was looking at her like, that was it really so obvious that Rosanit was not in the mood. Even Rose really hoped that the girl would not fall in love with Michaelis in this life, and asked if she was currently taking a walk. Rosanit replied that yes, golden hearts blossomed, and she wanted to admire their beauty. And then she turned her attention to our heroine's personal knight, and stated that she was accompanied by Sir Agnito. Chloe was panicking in her soul that she should just accept her mental signal and not fall in love with him. When the guy didn't respond, Rosanit asked him if he would answer her question. Michaelis apologized and said that he thought the princesses were talking to each other and tried not to listen too closely. The young man could not even imagine that some question was addressed to him. When the atmosphere became tense, our heroine, barely holding back her laughter, immediately said that they had already had enough fun, so it was time to go. Even Rose asked what he meant. Does it mean that he is uncomfortable communicating only with Rose in it? After thinking for a moment, the young man replied that he felt more disgust for her than for the Emperor. Our heroine was surprised. Was it really some unconscious part of Michaelis that was awakening hatred towards her in him? What had accumulated over the years was now pouring out in this form. Then perhaps our heroine also touches some strings of his soul. The young man thought about what the sage had said at the end, that there was a great reason for his awakening. He has not yet regained his memories of his past life, but it seems that echoes of some emotions from the past are now being felt. This is the only way to explain the strong, groundless hostility towards the eighth princess. They must have been enemies. Our heroine thought that she suddenly felt close to Michaelis at the thought that he might remember her. Some time later, the girl was given a report from two families regarding the Luciard family. They say they are preparing a concept aimed at aristocrats. Special rooms in the public baths and townhouse will be painted in pearl colors. Even Rose said that while listening to the report, something came to mind. Why not ask the Countess to repair her house? Naturally, all expenses will fall on her. The maid exclaimed that Her Highness had already generously gifted her. On the day when her personal servants greeted her, the girl was very surprised. Therefore, he definitely invites our heroine to visit. She can come at any time, let her feel at home there. Suddenly, another maid ran into the room, exclaiming that she had gotten what she had asked for. These are the tickets Her Highness requested. Ivan Rose noted that it must have been difficult to obtain them, but thank you very much. After some time, the young man was indignant. Why was she doing this? The girl replied that he was her personal knight, so there was no other way out. Michaelis said that she had promised that she would not use the power of imprinting. He never thought that the princess would do this to him. And now she brought a young man to a musical performance. This is very cruel. Chloe said that it was very difficult for the maid to get tickets. Ramona Rund had become very famous. She had already entered social circles, and it was time for her to sponsor an artist. The guy muttered that sponsorship was a type of relationship between members of the imperial family and a homunculus. So why the girl interrupted him and said that no, she just needed to get a sponsorship certificate by meeting with the theater owner. And anyway, they agreed that he would call her by name when they were outside. After some time, our heroine thought that social life has its downsides. The gypsy entered high society, and now she sings in the salon of the Marquise Sira. She receives many invitations, but the man tries not to let her go once again and asks to sing only for him. However, with the Marquise's permission, some nobles still continue to send invitations, so he tries to sort them out. Then he placed a list in front of her, in which Ivan Rose saw that it was the Marquise of Chinsley's nightclub. The girl was indignant that this was a gathering of drunks and perverts. Was he by any chance hiding behind the name of the Marquis? In order to earn some money on Ramona's talent, she would make an additional donation, so let him write more songs for the singer and never send her to such events. Chloe warned him, so she hopes that he will not do something that he will later regret. In the corridor, she was immediately met by a young man who asked if she had finished yet. Suddenly, they ran into Ramona, who exclaimed why she had only come now, since the girl had been looking for her for so long. When asked why what happened, the singer answered that she heard everything from the owner of the theater. Even Rose became her sponsor. No matter how well the mystery sold, wasn't it too cruel to hide the sponsor even from herself? Our heroine replied that it probably was, but she hadn't thought about it. Then the gypsy grabbed her by the hand, began to drag her along, and said that she had to show her something. The young man was indignant to himself. How dare she take the princess right from under his nose? The singer paid attention to him and said that her young man could also go with them. The young man first wanted to say that he was not a good boyfriend to her, but then he realized that if she thought so, she could go with them. On the way, the girl asked who our heroine works for, who is her sponsor. When Ivan Rose was at a loss and did not know what to answer, Nicholas said that she served Lady Sedella at Count Arfel. The singer muttered that she had never heard of him, but okay, maybe he really did exist. Then she said that it was time for her to perform, let them wait for her, and our heroine would never wander around here alone. The young man immediately said that he would send Amber to Lady Arfel to warn her. After some time sitting in the carriage, Ramona said that she just wanted to thank her sponsor. Even Rose replied that they had already notified her, so everything was fine. Then the singer asked if she liked the recent musical. Her character is the seventh empress. Just incredible, isn't it? Chloe replied that she was very interested. But to herself, she thought that, frankly, she was a little surprised, because even she had forgotten about her story. Then the gypsy looked out the window and noted that it seemed that this was where the public sauna was located. There are so many people there today, and in general, I would really like to get there sometime. Our heroine was surprised that she hadn't been there yet, although the more people learn about this place, the more difficult it is to get there. Ramona agreed with her, but thought that she simply didn't have a friend she could go there with, so she asked if Ivanrose had been there before. When the seventh princess answered that no, since she had no one to go there with, yet the singer exclaimed that maybe they could go together then. They say that the soap they sell there is very good for the body, so whether she would go with it, our heroine didn't know what to answer to that. The young man came to the rescue again, saying that it was unlikely that she would go anywhere since Iv didn't have much free time, even for him. The gypsy asked the guy what he was talking about. If they were to be together all the time, she would get tired of him very quickly. Actually, forcing one's company on her is a form of violence. Even Rose tried to calm her down and said that he was just worried about her because she was too shy. Ramona exclaimed that she could help solve this problem because very soon the sauna would open special separate rooms, it would become even more famous and earn a lot of money. Then they would definitely be able to go there together. Our heroine had no choice but to say that she agreed. After some time, our heroine informed Sedella that she had returned. The girl stated that it was faster than she thought. The singer immediately greeted her and apologized for the sudden visit. She just wanted to thank her for a long time, so she asked to go with Ive. When the maid asked if they were already so close that they called each other by name, the gypsy said that they had even agreed to go to a public sauna together. Arfel muttered that she really meant that the girl was going to a place where she would show off her naked body. Ivan Rose immediately reported that Ramona was going to become even more famous and earn a lot of money. Then they would be able to book a separate private room. The maid calmed down a little and muttered, "Okay then." The gypsy woman said that she would definitely become famous, so Count Arfel's reputation would also grow. She was sure that she would be able to earn enough to get a separate room in the sauna for them. Then she came to her senses and added that, of course, if Mrs. Sedella gives her permission for this. This made the maid laugh, so she said that she really liked the singer. The girl immediately asked her to please address her informally. Sedella said that then she would simply call her Ramona in a friendly manner. Ivan Rose thought to herself that although she had not managed to get into character very well, she was glad that she had the chance to introduce Arfel to her good friend. After which, she said that she didn't think this was the best place for conversation, so she needed to go into the living room and make some tea. For some reason, the maid's expression changed, and she muttered uncertainly that, well, Yvonne Rose didn't understand what that was just now. But when they went into the living room, everything fell into place. The maid was not alone in the house. That's why she became so nervous.